All right, welcome everybody. We're going to call our meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Born and unborn.
All right, we have approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the August 19th, 2019 regular meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Is there a motion to approve the September 3rd, 2019 regular meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Before we have our announcements, I did want to just take a moment of silent prayer for Elaine Ritchie's passing. She was the guidance secretary at Narragansett High School for many years, and I know there's many people in town who she helped to put together, their applications for college and any other issues that were going on in their lives. She had been the guidance secretary a long time, so we'll miss her. All right, thank you, everyone.
Amen.
All right. We have a proclamation recognizing Frank Eldridge, so I'm going to go down there, and I asked Mr. Eldridge to join. A proclamation recognizing Frank Eldridge. Whereas Frank Eldridge has worked for the town of Narragansett as a supervisor at the town beach for 26 years. And whereas a consummate professional, Frank is responsible for the supervision of the attendants performing daily revenue and maintenance responsibilities in the parking lots, pavilions, and our beach property. And whereas Frank knows all of our cabana patrons by their first and last names, greets them with genuine warmth, and inquires about their day, their children, life, job, etc. And whereas through his example, Frank teaches the attendants how to interact with the public with respect. When Frank works alongside a young 16 to 18-year-old beach attendant, he has them smiling, laughing, and learning throughout the day. And whereas Frank, a true gentleman, has an overwhelming charm, appreciation for life's gifts, and enjoys communicating with people of all ages. And whereas Frank, at the remarkable age of 93, is an inspiration to all of the employees at Narragansett Town Beach with his positive attitude and contagious smile. And whereas Frank is virtually the mayor of the beach, particularly in the Cabana area, and a true ambassador for the town of Narragansett, our entire staff looks forward to working when Frank is at the beach. Now, therefore, we, the Town Council of the town of Narragansett, do hereby extend our sincere appreciation and gratitude to Frank Eldridge for his outstanding service to the town and the staff and patrons of the town, Narragansett Town Beach. And I know that many of us know Mr. Eldridge. I've known him for many, many years, and here in town, and I know he would like to take this opportunity to address everybody who's here tonight. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members of the council. I don't know who they were talking about, but I don't believe it. But I'm very fortunate in life. Had a great family, great wife. I had a great job. I worked at the beach. I met all kinds of people, charming young ladies, young men that grow up later on and come back to see me, people that I see constantly at the beach, and yes, I do call them by name and so forth. I'm gifted because I can't remember names. I see people at the beach that are here today. I see a couple of young adults that work for me. Over on my right, where all the guys are my bosses. I don't know if I really paid attention to them, but we get along very nicely. And what I want to say is, this wasn't a job. This wasn't a job. This was a labor of love. I like the beach. I like the people. I like the atmosphere. If you're up some morning at 7 o'clock and I see the beach is just swept, you don't even see a footprint in the sand. And it's awe-inspiring. You look at the sun, you look at the water. And I think people of Narragansett, you've got a gem here. And you know, sometimes we don't realize how fortunate we are. Quick story, a lady come in from Kansas, wanted to see the ocean. I look at her. We see the ocean every day, and we take it for granted. And she was thrilled to see the ocean that we accept. But once again, I want to thank Steve Wright, Director of Recreation, Bill McAtee's over there, Dylan Sheridan, Steve, come on, I'll give you it. Anyway, and who died? Oh, and Rick. They're my bosses. They were nice to me. And back there's two young ladies that I supervised this past summer. And I'm very glad to see them also, but I'm glad to see all you people and recognize, please, what a gem you have. And thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break for Mr. Eldridge to take pictures with his family and others. Thank you. The next item, we have a scheduling of an executive session for a litigation update. I just want to check with the council if we are all meeting on Tuesday, October 15th for a beach work session at 6:30. Is it possible for people to come for an executive session for litigation update at 5:30 p.m. prior to that?
On the 15th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we need that much time? Is it an hour?
Yeah, well,
half
because it's
hour?
all the yeah.
So what's that, Tuesday?
Tuesday, if you're available. If I just want to make we weren't able to do it tonight, so
5:30.
Ricky, okay, all right, Terry, is that good? So that's 5:30. So we'll be 5:30 executive session, and then the 6:30 work session on the beach policies. That's the day after Columbus Day. All right, before our consent agenda, I do also want to take another moment of silence for Leo Miller. Many of you may know him as our former fire chief. His wife Susie was also on the school committee and town council, served here. So want to extend our sympathy to the Miller family at this time. All right, next is the consent agenda. Is there any item that anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda?
No.
All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 13 is a motion to reappoint 3 individuals to the Zoning and Plating Board of Review. I'll be looking for a motion on the 5-year position. There's a 5-year full-term position.
I'll make a motion to reappoint James Manning.
Second.
All right, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0.
I'm going to abstain.
I'm abstaining as well.
I'm sorry. Okay, motion approved 3-0. Is there a motion to reappoint or appoint another individual for the first alternate position?
Reappoint John C. Kennedy, alternate.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Are you abstaining?
Abstain.
Okay. Motion approved 3-0. And finally, there's a motion to reappoint for the second alternate or appoint for the second alternate position.
I'd like to reappoint Christopher Allman, alternate.
Second.
All right, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Motion approved 3-0. Next item, number 14, is a motion to approve the police department's request to hire 1 probationary patrol officer.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Any comments from the council? All right, any comments from the public? Yes. Please state your name and address.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. If we're going to hire another police officer, I'd like to see him or her, sent to the elementary school as our resource officer. We need a resource officer there now, and I know the town council is working on it. But, I'd hate to be in a position where something happened and the town council was just working on it, when we have a new officer that's going to be hired. And I can't see any reason why he shouldn't be placed there. Thank you.
Thank you. This is, I just want to, for the record, this is actually a replacement, though not an additional, and this is for Officer Storm. Anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 15 is a motion to approve the annual contract for technical support for the police department's computer software system with TriTech Software Systems in the amount of $17,988.75.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Anyone from the council? From the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion approved 5-0. Item 16 is a motion to approve the request from Rotary Club of Wakefield, Rhode Island to conduct a beach bumper ball fundraiser at the town beach on Saturday, November 16, 2019, from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., subject to approval of state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. So my understanding is that the Rotary Club has asked for this. Their balloon festival is something that they're not going to be doing this year. Is that correct, Steve? Right. So this is a new event, and they're asking for permission to use the beach. Anyone from the council? Anyone
Steve, do
from
you
the
want to
public?
speak? I don't know if you're doing this. You want to say something?
Steve, do you want to come forward? All right.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I thought you wanted to say something because I saw you move a motion.
No, I just wanted to reiterate that we had some concerns about the safety of this new event, and I did go through the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust, and they have vetted this, and with some restrictions, I did put it in the agenda. So far, we're just capping this to 250 people. Spencer is here from the Rotary Club of Wakefield if you did want to ask him questions, but I think we've got everything as far as a pilot program for the first year. I think we've got everything under control, and particularly this time of year, I think we're satisfied with all the requirements. Yes, sir.
Steve, any organization that seeks a permit for an event like this, they're always required to acquire insurance, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
And they also have the North Beach Clubhouse booked that day as well?
That's correct. In fact, they're going to be covering the floor, similar to what the Narragansett Lions Club do for the plunge. They'll be covering the floor to protect the floor because, again, we don't want any damages to the North Beach Clubhouse, Conacha Club.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. It's the first time for this event, so Steve will be monitoring it closely, I'm sure. Yes. Yes.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. South Kingston has a lot of facilities. They have that brand-new community center. They have a beach. They have the Guild. They have plenty of places where they could hold this activity. I can't imagine why they have to hold it at our beach club. They're not going to go in the water or anything like that. You're going to have to hire a police officer or detail. They're signing some waiver of liability, which I don't know if it's worth the paper it's written on, because how much money does the Rotary Club of Wakefield have? They're going to get some kind of, probably one of those tulip policies, and you have to cover the floor, and they're going to serve alcohol. I just don't see the point of it. They have facilities themselves. Why are they using our beach club? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 17 is a motion to approve the purchase of one new 2020 Chevrolet Silverado 3500 HDCC four-wheel drive regular cab work truck with dump body for parts from National Auto Fleet Group using the Sourcewell contract in the amount of $55,016.06.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I guess us renting the Rotary Club's going to help pay for this?
There you go.
That's a good reason, right?
Anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. Item 18 is a motion to refer the request from Selena A. Pereira McGowan, Plat NH, lots 395 and 398, 42 Algonquin Road, and the request from Elena Ritchie, Plat NH, lots 1, 2, and 3, 830 Boston Neck Road, for waiver of the Sewer Policy Committee to the Sewer Policy Committee for review.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Any comments from the council? Any comments from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. Item 19 is a motion to approve the purchase of one new 2020 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 HD four-wheel drive pickup work truck from National Auto Fleet Group using the Sourcewell contract in the amount of $37,697.25.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All right, anyone from the public? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. Item number 20 is a motion to approve a one-year contract extension for building renovation, restoration, and reconstruction services with Abcor Restoration Company at the revised bid prices to comply with state prevailing wages under the same terms and conditions as the original bid.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion from the council. All right, anyone from the public? Yes.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. I live about 100 feet from the Earls Court Water Tower, and as I understand it, this contract allows Mr. Lescarbot to repair historic structures in this town, and we have a historic structure on Earls Court. Now, I'm not suggesting that we do a renovation, but right now, I've taken a number of pictures, I'll send them to the town manager. A lot of mortar's missing, a lot of the stones are missing. It really needs some assistance, and I'd like that to be something that's on his agenda. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jim, if we can mention that, because this is a one-year renewal contract because it's for different projects, that would be great. Anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. Item 21 is a motion to schedule a work session on Monday, November 18th at 6:30 p.m. to discuss proposals to potentially amend the existing parking ordinances on or about the following town roads: Nichols Ave, Califf Avenue, Conant Ave, Louise Avenue, and Pilgrim Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. This is just for scheduling of a work session on this issue that was addressed in the summertime. Is that the time that works for everybody?
Yep.
Yes.
Any
Yeah.
comments? All right, all in favor?
Sure, I have a few comments real quick.
Okay.
So just for anyone who was paying attention to this item over the summer, we did hold a workshop this past summer to talk about some preliminary plans. Out of that workshop came some action items. One was a proposal from one of the residents in that neighborhood, and then there was also a group of ocean access advocates who put together a proposal. So I know that they all met with town staff, including the town manager, and showed their proposals and discussed some options. So this upcoming workshop would be a new workshop to talk about these new refined options and this new proposal. And I do think that this proposal is a compromise after hearing from all parties involved. I think it really solves some of the safety issues that we're seeing in that neighborhood and some of the infrastructure issues. And importantly, it is sympathetic to the residents of that neighborhood in ways that possibly some of the initial discussion was not. So it'll all be outlined in the workshop, but I think it's important to have, and I think it's a good step forward. I would also like to add that for the people that are here tonight for this item, I do think that you should I would like to see some people stay to the end of this meeting. There's an item at the very end of this meeting that seeks to restrict public comment at the meetings. So everyone here are people that come to meetings, so that item is going to affect everybody in the future. So I do think it's important that people stick around, stay to the last item in this meeting, and see what that's about as well. So thank you.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item number 22 is a motion to receive a certification by the Narragansett Board of Canvassers of a voter initiative petition to amend the Code of Ordinances to add a new section 42-2 to be titled Acquisition and Renovation of New Library at the former Belmont IGA location.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so this is the, I'm going to actually, Terry, do you want to just describe, because there's 3 initiatives and they're at different stages time-wise, just so people know what we're doing here. We're receiving, at this point, with the certification from the Board of Canvassers, but I'm going to turn it over to Terry because she's been working on it.
Sure.
Right.
Items number 22 and 23 are voter initiatives that have been going through the process and are to the point where the Board of Canvassers met and did a certification of the signatures that appeared on the petitions and have now submitted their report to the Town Council as to the certified signatures on each of those petitions. Number 24 is different in as much as the Town Council has already received the certification at a prior meeting, and now, according to the charter, it comes back to the Town Council within 45 days to possibly take action.
All right, and the substance of number 22 is the, what's just so we know what the substance is of that one. This is the one that talks about if bond money is going to be used, it must be used, of the $5.8 million, it must be used at Belmont IGA. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Anyone from the council? Anyone from the public? All right. Richard, yes.
Hi, Richard Vangermish. I'm hard-pressed to think that the liquor store remaining a liquor store and the second floor, which is only useful to the liquor store, that this is the best use for this property. Those 2 parts are really 2 different sections of a 3-section building. Anything to undo something that will, like this, will undo the best use of the property, and that's never wise. But let me just repeat what I said a few weeks ago. It's the 4 M's. We need moderation of behavior, meditation, medication, but most importantly, we need mediation. It was most important. Unhappy to hear the judge not insist upon required mediation. Mediation will solve this problem. It is a solvable problem, and if we don't try it, we are all doomed to a continuation of nonsense.
All right, thank you. Is
Quick
there anyone
question
else?
for the solicitor. We've had so many of these petitions that I'm maybe confusing myself a little bit. These have all been deemed legal, correct? So this is now a procedural step. Okay.
You can still vote yes or no, whether you support it or not. Technically, we're supposed to.
Although the charter says that if it's legal, we must
explain that
vote
one?
yes.
Well, we're receiving the certification of the
Right.
signatures. So if you wanted to vote, if you felt that one of these wasn't legal, at this, again, everyone can vote how they want, but this is receiving what the Board of Canvassers collected signatures were, and as Terry described, then it's going to come back to us for another step. And if you recall, before this, kind of gatekeeping part of this, when these came to us, we had to decide which ones could go forward to collect signatures. And so there was not all of them did go forward. All right. Anyone else? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 23 is a motion to receive a certification by the Narragansett Board of Canvassers of a voter initiative petition to amend the town charter, Section 1-3-1, defining the powers of town by adding the provision, but only may sell property after approval by the town's voters after being submitted to the electorate on referendum ballot at the next scheduled election.
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion. So this, again, Terry, is at the same stage. We're receiving the signatures that were obtained through the initiative process. This specifically would require town-wide approval and a vote before the town council could sell any property. So in November of 2020, when this is on the ballot, this again would require a town vote before the sale of any property by the town council, which is not the situation as it is now. Any comments or questions? Anything I missed, Terry? No. Okay.
And just to reiterate, this isn't an endorsement of this petition. This is just procedural, saying that we received.
Yeah, and for the record, I'm against agenda item 23. I don't believe we should be putting on the ballot up and down votes for the voters to sell or buy buildings. That's what you elect your officials. I think we should, every 10 years, we review our charter. And I think the easiest path would be a supermajority, where it would be a 4-1 vote to either buy or sell property. That's the easier path. Instead of going to the voters, you never get anything done. The bureaucracy is exhausting as it is. 4-1 vote is a supermajority, and that's the path I'm going to try to pursue. So I will move it forward, but I don't support it, for the record. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
So again, what Patrick's saying is, this is basically to sell property.
Yeah, okay.
Right. There probably should be one in there to buy as well. Because if you're going to have councils buying property, then you should, but they can't sell them, then the taxpayers get stuck on both sides of the coin. So kind of on that board with Patrick on this one. I think that councils are elected. If we purchase something, we purchase. If we sell it, we sell it. But I will state this, before we buy anything, I hope, again in this town, that everybody sits down, the town manager, finance director, everybody sits down and figures out what kind of money we have to buy anything, and then move forward with it. Because we can buy everything that we want in this town, and there's nobody in this room, including this council, that doesn't want the best for this town. But we can buy things that you just can't afford because the taxes limit us on what we can do. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. Anyone else? Yes. I know. Next one.
Yeah, let me once again ask, every word here that is said is crucial, and I want to hear every word. Now, I know part of my problem is my hearing has dimmed, but not the brain. But somehow I don't think we have continued on to make an effort so that every person here can hear every important word, and every word is important that is said.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask everyone to that end to try to make an effort to speak into their microphones for both the people here and everybody at home. All right, because sometimes we can step away from them. All right. Anything else? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved 5-0. Just our 8 p.m. items on scheduling public hearings. So first we have a motion to schedule a public hearing on the application of Benny's Clam Shack LLC, David Thomas, President, 12 Sand Hill Cove Road, Plat N, Lot 275, Narragansett, Rhode Island, for a Class BV limited liquor license. Is there a motion to schedule this for, Terry, the date, what is the date on this?
November 4th at 8 p.m.
All right, so this would be to schedule this for November 4th at 8 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 8-0. Next is a motion to schedule a public hearing to consider submittal of a request for a 2019 Community Development Block Grant in the amount of $75,000 from the state set aside for local housing rehabilitation.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, what evening are we looking at for this?
The next regular meeting, Monday, October 21st at 8 p.m. Sorry. The next regular scheduled meeting, Monday, October 21st at 8 p.m.
All right, does everyone have that? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. Next is a motion to schedule a public hearing and refer to the Planning Board the issue of amending Narragansett zoning ordinances to address the Rhode Island General Assembly's passage of Bill S-0689, which amended the definition of building height, which affects Narragansett.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, so in a couple items here. In terms of a date, if you recall, we dealt with this issue in January. Unfortunately, this was the issue of the building heights, where there was a concern, basically where if there was a certain closeness to the water because of sea level rise, that the house could be built on stilts and still have its the full-size house of 35 feet go up. So we would have houses that could go up into 50 or 55 feet in height, including the stilts that are under them. So we need to now change, because since we made a change to our ordinance, there was the General Assembly, I think in the summertime, amended that law. So when we did this before, it was on an off night, so I'm just going to ask if we do that the same, because I think it deserves that kind of attention. And so that would be the off night we were looking at would be November 25th, if that was possible.
I'm not here.
They should have this cobbled together. This should be a quick up and down vote. I don't think there's going to be a big,
Well, but the Planning Board has to hear it, so
Yeah.
it goes to them.
Right.
Then it comes back to us, so
Right.
there's a time.
sure. But for us, it should just be a quick yes or no vote, right, Mike? Technically?
Why don't we refer it to the Planning Board, and then we'll, with a date to be determined regarding the date, we'll look at dates, because I'm hearing some people don't, originally, the agenda item doesn't say an off night, but I think we should do it off night. So it's gonna be a motion to refer to the Planning Board the issue of amending Narragansett zoning ordinances to address the Rhode Island General Assembly's passage of S-0689, which amended the definition of building height, which affects Narragansett, and to schedule a hearing at our future meeting. Is there a
So
motion?
moved.
Second.
All right. Just all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. Thank you. All right, number 24. Item number 24 is a motion to take action upon a voter initiative petition to amend the town charter to create a recall provision.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, discussion. So this is requiring us to, well, I'm going to turn it over to Terry, but it's a little different motion. I wanted to walk us through procedurally where this one is, and we can, and then go from there.
Okay, so this voter initiative has to do with the proposal to amend the town charter to create a recall provision for elected officials. And it has gone through the process of verification with the Board of Canvassers for valid signatures. The council has received that certification at a prior meeting. And now, according to the charter, it comes back to the town council within 45 days of that receipt of certification for possible action.
So the language is attached, everybody. It's rather lengthy, which would be the proposed town charter amendment. So when this says a motion to take action, the next step would be preparing this to be on the 2020 ballot. So we would have to figure out what that language would look like, because the language that's here would be a little long, all right, to put on the ballot item. So we've got to think about if we want to get the sponsor, town staff, council members together to kind of work out what that language would look like, which would summarize what the recall provision would look like. Because right now, it's essentially 4 paragraphs, and in a presidential election year, that's going to be very lengthy on the ballot. So I don't know what people's thoughts are on that. We could create a group to put together language. It would have to come back to us for approval.
Terry, any chance you could walk us through what the timeline that this process would be, and how long of a term any person who would be recalled would actually have on the council?
Well, according to the timeline that's set forth in the proposed charter amendment, an elected official would have to be in office at least 6 months before the petition for recall could be submitted. So then the petitioners would have 2 months to gather signatures. Then those signatures would have to be certified by a duly called meeting of the Board of Canvassers. And then after that certification, it would have to appear on a ballot within 2.5 months of that certification. So up to that point, someone would have been in office for at least 10.5 months, up to the point of having an election. The alternative is that if this occurs and it is within 120 days of the next regular election, it would appear on that ballot.
So this one's the furthest along of all the initiatives. So there's 3
Yes, it is.
initiatives, and this one is kind of at the stage where the ballot has to be whatever that draft language is going to look like. So as I said, if we don't take action, you're going to have what's in front of you here, which is the 4 paragraphs. But that is going to be unwieldy. I mean, the council can choose to put that on, but I think that would be unwieldy when we have many ballot items on year after year. So is there, we don't have to take action. We can take action on it. I mean, my suggestion would be to direct the staff to maybe reach out to the sponsor and then come back with language that would be ready for the ballot. But I don't want to see what other people's thoughts are.
What about our Board of Canvassers? Aren't they, couldn't they take this and look it over and compare it to other towns and cobble together a Narragansett version of a recall?
Well, this is the version. They're not going to change it. This is basically to say, do you support a recall? I mean, it would be a ballot item. Do you support the recall, amending section, chapter, this section of the town charter?
Right.
You want to kind of have these be 1 or 2 sentences, not 4 paragraphs.
Right, okay, well, I mean, is the Board of my question is the Board of Canvassers capable of editing this down in their, function as a Board of Canvassers? It seems like this is in their wheelhouse.
I don't know if that's their function is to check voter.
No?
I don't know,
Yes?
this is somewhat new territory, but I'm not
Sure.
sure they have the latitude to amend a question as it's been
Right.
petitioned
Right.
and
Well, maybe they
submitted.
can get with one of the attorneys and kind of,
And
put
probably
together.
the Board of Elections and Secretary of State's office for some guidance.
And we could have our town manager meet with the sponsor to start off. I mean, we've got the ballot question.
Do we just want to
Can't be
continue
for.
this until they can all meet? I mean, I don't know. Seems to me
Why don't we
like-
direct the town manager to meet with the sponsor
Sure,
and take it from there?
Okay.
right. And they can
Is there a-
simplify something, that would be great.
A motion for that to take place with a proposal for us then we'd have to vote on that language. Remember, this isn't going to go to the state like a lot of our other items go to. This is a
Right.
local initiative, so
Right.
we don't need enabling legislation or anything like that. Did you get that motion, Terry?
To direct the town manager to meet with the sponsor
And come back with,
and report back to the council.
Second.
all right, discussion on that. All right, anyone out, anyone from the public? Yes.
Gloria Roman, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road. With this motion, I just hope that would be the time for you to vote to put it on, and I believe the charter says that that once it's been declared legal, it can go forward. So I just want to make sure that the town council is not going to drag this on so that it cannot get on the 2020 election. So please be mindful of that, and Jim, I would ask you to be mindful of that, because I don't want this to be an underhanded way of eliminating it. Thank you.
Right, that's why he's meeting with the sponsor. Yes, Stanley.
Stan Wachowski, Narragansett. I just wanted to ask a question. For the past 20 or so years, I've been very interested in taxation and keeping it at the cost of living, a limit at cost of living over those years. And this seems to be a situation where I could try to enforce that. In other words, would it be possible under this provision that I could, any council person that did not vote on a budget to not increase more than the cost of living would violate my idea. Therefore, I could ask 2 or 3, every one of them to be recalled. I could ask them to be recalled. I could go out there and get signatures and try to recall any council person who doesn't stay within that cost of living. Is that true? So, for me, it's finance, but I guess other people could have other ideas on zoning and whatever. But I'm just looking at, I'd have some incentive to come in here and try to maintain some fiscal responsibility by saying, okay, I'm going to try to recall every town council person who tries to increase the budget more than the cost of living. And how does that fit? Does that fit okay then?
You would have to
get the signatures, right?
25% of the last voting election.
And how much was that this time? Was it 1,000? I don't remember how many.
856, I believe, Terry.
856? 856?
12%.
Yeah, this would be 25%. It would be a different standard.
A different
for
standard.
the
Just get
recall.
more signatures.
Correct.
I think if
For
I
the last
go
election,
out there and try to get the taxes down, I think people will sign it like mad,
You need 1,700. You got to go bang on 1,700 doors, Stanley.
So
I know you're up for
1,700.
it.
So all I need is 1,700 signatures, and I could at least get it on there to try to remove the council
Yes,
member who was more than the cost of
And
living.
you can bang on my door first, and I'll be the first one
Okay,
to
I just
sign.
wanted to, I just wanted to see what the effects are.
Stanley, before you go, you're right. You could get one council person eliminated. Somebody else could get another one. Somebody else could get another one. Somebody else could get another one. And at the tune of $12,000, roughly, for each one of these elections, welcome the taxpayers.
I just say we're opening a Pandora's box here. It looks like, it's not only, it's for zoning, it's for any issue that we disagree on or we don't like. Any citizen doesn't like something, all you got to go out there and get 1,700 signatures, and he can get rid of you.
Well, in my 60 years, almost 60 years of living here, I've never seen, buyer remorse until recently on candidates. So, this is where this is spurred from. So I don't think there's going to be, perpetual elections for councilmen who do whatever, or council persons who do whatever. I mean, I think this is a...
At least it's out there, though. We can,
It's out there, it's a provision that can be
complain,
used, but it's in the toolbox, and I don't think it's going to come out of the toolbox.
if people complain, you say, hey, go out there and get 1,700 signatures, and you'll do something. Whatever it is, whether it's zoning or not.
Thank
Finance.
you.
Thank you.
Not easy banging on doors.
And so again, this is a recall provision, so some states and towns have that, have a recall provision, and this is what will be on the ballot in 2020, November of 2020. We're going to get at the actual ballot language from Jim meeting with the sponsor. Who was the sponsor of this one, Terry?
Winters Hames.
Thank you. All right, any other questions?
So if we do not move forward to direct the town manager to do any of this, then this full summary would go on the ballot? Because it has to go on, right?
Right.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Just to clarify, too, we're not voting if we're in favor of it, because I am totally not in favor of it. It will be a perpetual election. It will get nothing done. Things will be clogged up in town.
You mean like now?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly like now, Patrick. Because special interest groups will continue to do what they're doing right now, and we will not get anything done. Stanley's absolutely 100% correct. If someone doesn't like one of the council members, they can try to go out there and get rid of them. From conversation we had with Terry, it sounds like an election would occur and a new council person would probably be seated for about maybe 3 months. Would that be an accurate statement? Maybe
Could
3
be.
months.
Could be.
So it's an awful lot to put a town through for 3 months.
That works for my schedule.
We should mention that many other towns have the recall provision, and you rarely ever see that enacted. You only see it when an elected official has done something illegal. It's very, very rarely used. It shouldn't be any different here. And again, we're voting on whether this is legal or not, and it's straightforward that it's legal. So I do appreciate, we all appreciate the comments, but again, we're not endorsing it. We're just saying
Well,
it's
I wanted to
legal.
make sure it was abundantly clear we're not endorsing it. Thank you.
And it can be used to have perpetual campaigns.
Absolutely.
Probably a case in point is the Wisconsin governor's race, that there were several recalls over the last 6 years, and there was no issues of malfeasance or wrongdoing. It just was political differences. Is there anyone else? Jason.
I would imagine that since this was enacted.
Name and
Name and
address,
address, please.
Jason Howell, 116 Westmoreland Street. I would imagine that this would help in two things. One is the people that are actually running for office will be able to communicate the truth of where they will stand when they get elected. And two, so that they're not recalled. And two is that the voters will probably increase in the actual election so that they're voting for the right person so that they don't have to go through a recall. No one wants to go through the recall. We just want to know who's speaking the truth during an election so we can make an honest decision and choice to vote for the person that we want, whether it's who I want or this gentleman wants. That's all we're looking for. And when that mistake happens and we don't get what we want to be able to recall that person.
Good evening. Meg Rogers, 68 Earls Court. When I was a little girl and I did something bad, my mother, usually, she was a disciplinarian, would send me to my room and tell me that I needed to reflect upon whom I'd hurt, whom I'd offended, and would I do better. And I would hope that Council President Mannix, Ms. Lawler, and Mr. Lima would take this recall initiative that so many of us worked so hard on and do a little self-reflection and meditate on the fact that for the first time in the history of the beautiful town of Narragansett, your citizens felt it incumbent upon them to put a recall initiative on the 2020 ballot. It's a tragedy this had to happen, and I hope you'll realize that you are the reason we are doing this.
No, the reason is that a sponsor and others collected signatures. That's the reason, over a political difference. That's what happened. Thank you. Susan.
Susan Amoruso, West Bay Drive. I just can't believe that this conversation is going on. It's insulting that you think that we would be frivolous, that you just think that this is going to be done on a whim. I mean, these signatures were collected with a lot of hard work, and people signed it because they're unhappy and we have no provision. So we can vote in the 2020 election. But if someone does something that's so outrageous, that's what it's for. It's not for like, yeah, I didn't kind of like that. Oh, let's do it. It's going to be a much more serious thing. And I think you should be aware of that and not be so offensive about this and trying to diminish the voice of democracy here.
Except we forget that the Friends of the Library and the Democratic Party made it very clear who to vote for in the last election. And it was part of the election, and we pretend that did not happen. And that was the Belmont Four, and there were many signs regarding the Belmont Four. The Belmont Four were Patrick, Jesse, Wynn Hames, the sponsor of this initiative, who's trying to undo the election, and Susan Cicilline Bonanno. Okay, so that's the facts. So you can pretend all you want that that did not happen and that you didn't campaign against certain people, but that's what happened. And now you want to redo it, and that's the shame. Richard.
I don't think anyone was surprised that Matt and Jill voted the way they did before and how they voted on this particular term. It was clear they voted no, no, no on the bond issue. And it was clear that Rick was very involved. He was on the building committee for the library. It was very clear that these three people were excluded from the four people that were paraded around the library as to whom to vote. And guess what? Only two of the people on the parade won. The other three have been consistent in their positions. And to that, I give them credit.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Vicki Crowningshield, Birchwood Drive. I think your term of facts is a little loose. I'll leave it at that. This is a provision to put it on the ballot. So duly noted you don't agree, but you can vote against it, and we'll see in 2020 where it goes.
Thank you. Catherine. Catherine.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. I am not necessarily opposed to recall petitions, but they need to be specific. They need to lay out reasons why you would try to remove somebody from office who was duly elected. And these reasons are pretty common and clear: malfeasance of office, arrest on a felony, drug use, sexual offense. You have to have reasons why you would recall somebody. And that's how you set parameters to a recall provision. Our state law, which talks about recalls, has parameters, and this does not. Now, I guess we'll be on the point where we could amend this. Is that the case here?
Yes, this one does not have provisions.
So
it can
I know it
recall
doesn't,
anyone.
and that's the issue with it. So there's a lot of discussion going on here, but it appears that this is going on the ballot anyway. Well, then I guess it's for people to decide if they want this loosey-goosey thing, as a recall provision, or do they want specifics?
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 25 is a motion to approve a proposal from CoFile Technologies for software licensing installation, conversion services, support, and maintenance of its Town Fusion Records Management System for a 60-month contract at the monthly rate of $1,950, and for microfilm storage at the annual rate of $2 per roll, and authorize the town manager to sign the contract after review by the town solicitor.
So moved.
Discussion. All right, so this is for, it's a different company for dealing with a lot of the records in Town Hall, some of the land evidence records and things that you're familiar with when you go to our lovely town clerk's office. So any comments or questions from the council? Anyone from the public? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 26 is a motion to direct the town manager to authorize the transfer of $414,743 from the town reserve funds to the Maury Lungens Memorial Library.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. This item comes from Mr. Pugh.
And Councilor Murray, I believe. Want to make sure you, right?
Yes.
Co-sponsor?
Yes, I'm on board.
All right.
Last call for state funding.
Yep, so as we discussed during the budget workshop, we were aware that if the town did not level fund the library, which is fund it the same that it had done the previous year, same level, that we would no longer be eligible for the state aid, which we have enjoyed over the years. The state aid of $180,000, I believe. 181,000. So part of the discussion during the budget was that when would we lose that? Were we going to lose that this year? Were we going to lose it next year? And we had a debate about that, and a lot of people said we were going to lose it this year. Unfortunately, in our town budget, that $181,000 is in the budget, which is incorrect, which is an error and should not have been in the budget in the first place. We received a letter from OLIS, which is Office of Library and Information Services, a state agency, telling us that we will be not receiving that state aid. However, we are eligible to file a waiver, to request a waiver. The waiver is a hardship waiver, so you need to really prove a hardship, true budgetary issues at a town. We don't have that here. So we'll file that waiver. We're not going to get it because we don't have a hardship. Our hardship is we have a town council that's hostile to the library. That's, I guess, the hardship. So this is really the last chance to fund properly and still receive the state aid. If we don't fund it, the money's gone. We're not going to receive it. So we have basically, I think, until November 1st to prove that we've funded the library or to receive that waiver. Like I said, I don't believe we're going to receive the waiver. I don't think most people believe that. So this is a request to transfer from the emergency fund, correct the mistake that we made, and receive that money from the state. We can get into that.
Right. Is there anyone else from the council?
So originally, I believe we were at 841. We allocated 400,000. That would leave 441,000. Now we're down to 414,743. So that wouldn't be level funding either.
It is level funding in this case. They're basing that on the expenditure, not the appropriation. So the expenditure was 814,000, so it's about 27,000 less than the appropriation. So we really have to fund the expenditure. So it is a slight difference, but so actually we'd be funding a little bit less than what we were going to do earlier.
Right. So there was another option that was out there. Not sure if the other council people were aware of it. But the other option was that the library board could take money from their surplus, give it to the town, and in turn, we would return it to them, and they would get their funding. They'd get $181,000 in funding. Just give us the 414, and you would receive, and we'd give it right back, and you would just receive the 181. I just want people to know at home that this option was out there, and they refused to do it.
So what happened to it?
Ask them.
Well, nobody
Ask
handed
the
me
library board.
Nobody handed me a document saying that this.
Well, it was
I
offered.
heard something about it.
Yeah,
and
it was offered, but again, to me, that seems like a simple way to get your funding. Just hand our finance director that check. She'll give it right back to you, and we're on our way. You got your 181, you got your state funding, and everybody that wants to use the library will be happy that they have that state program. I would certainly do that. I think you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You tell us we should be ashamed. You should be ashamed. You want us to kick in more taxpayer money when all you have to do is take the money that you have in your fund balance that's been collected over the years, return it, we give it back, and your state funding is in your hands. I hope the people at home really listen to this, because it's shameful that that's not being done.
well, okay, boy, where do I begin?
Right. You know, Patrick, this is the answer to this part. There's
Yeah,
a lot
well-
on the
well-
table here with this.
Well, how come you didn't make an agenda item? I would have supported that.
It wasn't up to me. It was up to the library board to do that through OLIS, and they refused.
It was actually during a council meeting, Rick brought it up. I said I too would go along with that, and they would have their funding be level funded. And they refused to do so. They said no. That was at a council meeting. You can go back and watch the videotape. They have the money. The unfortunate thing that's happening here is that the Library Board of Trustees is trying to pin on the three of us that the town will not have the ability to use the local system as well as the integral system in the state. That's not true. They have the money in their account. Unfortunately, because they are not a town department, they are allowed to take the money in their account once we give them the check and do what they wish with. We've seen this. We've seen things that they spend things on. And unfortunately, unlike anybody else, and unlike any town department, if there's a surplus left over, it goes back to the general fund. In this case, because we do not have the right and the ability to handle their money, our finance director does not, she just accounts for it, it stayed in their account. And what happened over the last several years is not all the money that we would give for a yearly use was being used, and it was being collected, and it came up to about a $700,000 surplus. No other place in town has this, with the exception we had an issue with the school department years ago, and the school department worked with us to rectify it. So let it be really clear right now that should the Library Board of Trustees not wish to use the money that the taxpayers have been giving them over the last years to operate the library on a yearly basis, they are the ones that will be shutting down the privileges for the patrons that they claim to really love and respect.
Well,
Just a couple comments on that. So the last 2 years before 2019, the library actually spent over their budget. So that reserve had been going down. So if they transferred all that money back and then received their level funding, they would be below budget. They haven't received an increase of their budget in years. So that 841 has been the same budget for like 5 or 6 years. The only reason they were able to use that is because they were dipping into the reserve the last few years. The reserve is a combination of funding that they've saved for the move to Belmont, and also it includes donations, and revenue that they bring in as a library. So the idea that they're hoarding this money for no reason is not true. And when you look at the series of events, you have to remember that they've been saving money to move into a building that has been planned for years, that has been approved, that has been purchased. We have a town council that took that building from them, sold it, and then said, we're going to take all that money you've been saving as well. So that's what's actually happening here. This isn't money that's just sitting around for no reason.
Well, let's start it off then. 2014-15, fund balance, $321,682. 2014-15. 2016, fund balance, $596,200. $285, an increase of $274,603. February 2017, fund balance, $732,681, an increase of $136,396. June 30th, 2018, the fund balance got as high as $904,328, an increase of $171,647. Don't sit here and tell me they don't have extra money.
So you said it was 900,000 and now it's at 686.
That's
So
that's because they did use some. You're right, Jesse.
they've been using it. They're also covering the,
and you're right,
the pensions that you took away. Not you.
Pensions?
The
One at a
previous,
time.
the previous
One at a time.
Can I
town
talk?
council.
One
Can
at a
I
time.
talk and then you can cut in?
One at a time, please.
Is that okay?
It's okay, Rick.
Fine. Be a little professional at times. So interesting. So interesting, if you want to know where this money goes, I know, some people don't want to know where the money goes. Let's just open the checkbook and let them have it. In June, and I don't disagree with some of this I think was very important. I also think that at some point, the library employees should get together and try to become a town department. I really do. This would resolve a lot for them, a lot for their pensions, a lot for their health care. But if it's done, it's got to go through the town manager, and he's got to be okay with it. So recently, July 1, 2019, effectively raises were given out for the employees of the library. I do have the numbers, but I'm not going to pinpoint anybody where they are. But I will say this. There are some salaries here that people should go on and look at. Some are extremely high and some were needed. That's where the money goes. I don't know how they come about it, how they do their raises, but I will say this. There were some raises that were 8% increases, 6% increases, and then there were $500 bonuses given. I don't know anybody in a town that gets a $500 bonus.
Mr. Murray.
Okay. All right, so we went from maintenance effort, state funding, labor relations. Okay, let's start off with the labor. Yeah, I think there were like 2 or 3 employees. They're supposed to be in the pension, and the town's contention, they're not town employees, so they're not going on the pension. Okay, and I've been trying to work with, have like a similar 401k plan. It's called a 50C3 municipal 401k, and that didn't pan out for whatever bureaucratic reason. Or we couldn't provide another tax ID or some nonsense. So that's what happened there. Now, maintenance of effort is something you see in the school system. The town has an obligation to give, from a formula from the state, to give the school system a certain amount of money to fund the school. So the library is a different animal. It's kind of like a quasi-town entity, private donation, fund, and it's a real different animal from any other department in the town or entity in the town. So the funding is murky as far as, because we give them money, they're in control of it. That's not normal. And we should commend the board for saving that money, because the 10-year plan was to move, and they were keeping their powder dry, trying to, get, a war chest to move into the Belmont building. So I commend them for, watching the nickels, and even though it's taxpayer money, at least they didn't spend it frivolously. They've been saving it to make the move. So I don't think they should be taken out to the woodshed. I think they should be commended. So, and as far as the maintenance effort, the only town in recent history who got a waiver is the town of Central Falls when they went bankrupt. So we're on the same plane as a bankrupt community in the northern part of the state because we don't want to fund our library. That doesn't make much sense to me. So I can support funding this till all this is hashed out. I mean, you're talking 400 and change in a $64 million budget. It's, and to lose that state funding, it isn't something you can just take up again next year. It's a process. And from what I understand, we're supposed to lose some services. I think before the vote, somebody should explain that one, because I'm not quite sure which services are going to be discontinued. But from what I understand, it's pretty significant. So I can support this funding until we sort this whole library question out. Thank you.
Thank you. So when we were in the budget and we set our budget, it was $841,000 had gone to the library and in the prior year, and $181,000 had come from the state match, which is what, if we maintain the effort. So if we maintain the effort year after year, you get the state match. At the time, we also, at the time we were going through the budget, though, there was the discussion of this surplus of $660,000, approximately $660,000. And it is kind of murky, Patrick, as to why that was being put away there, because we had a $5.8 million bond that was being discussed. We had discussion of, in the budget, we had a total price tag put forward for the library from the finance director. The bottom line was that the Board of Trustees really wasn't entitled to squirrel away that money and then use it for anything regarding the Belmont IGA Gilbane building. But let's just do the math. 841 plus 181, we saw the surplus of 660, and we then gave an allocation of 400. So this year, we don't need the state money. So it would be very odd for the state when they can give that to someone else, because the total, there's still a surplus. There's still a surplus of $40,000 over there. It'd be pretty odd for the state to essentially punish us when they can use that money elsewhere and say, we're going to take away clan card privileges, we're going to take away the transfer privileges. That would be very odd. But the bottom line is, next year, the maintenance of effort is going to be roughly that 25%. We're going to want to apply for that to the state of what the budget is at that time. But there was no reason for a $660,000 surplus of that amount, and that really shouldn't have been used to be for any kind of deal with the Belmont building, because that was the whole point of the $5.8 million bond. That was part of the discussion. We're going to purchase, renovate property. So anyway, that's all on that end. Is there
So
anyone?
you acknowledge that the bond was for the Belmont?
When we discussed the 5.8, we said purchase and renovate. We had 4 options, if you remember, we looked at.
Yeah,
Right?
and then you
We
voted to
did.
keep it in the pier, so there's only 2 options, was the
Which I've always
renovate
said,
or the Belmont.
if it was too expensive, I wanted to go with Plan B, right?
Plan B was what?
To do the existing building, to fix the second floor in the
And that was
existing
more
building.
expensive, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. All right, so this is, I also wonder, wait, this is $414,000. We've done our budget. Where is this going to come from in our budget, right? We've budgeted, I'm curious as to where we're going to get this.
Yep, it's in the motion. It comes from the reserve.
So you want to go into our fund balance
Yeah.
to fund this, to increase the surplus of the library?
Correct.
And so then when you know that fund balance is what helps us with our bond rating, right? If $400,000 taken from our fund balance is going to reduce the percentage our fund balance is and jeopardize
That's
our bond
right,
rating.
because we took 2.8. Remember, we discussed this like multiple times. over the last
$2.8
year?
million came from the general fund.
No, it came from the reserve.
No.
$2.8 million came from our general fund.
The
But whether you want to
2.8
call it wherever, but it didn't come, it wasn't borrowed.
9%.
Yeah, we're not borrowing this either.
We're taking this, we have a budget. So we're going over our budget from last year by $400,000. Money doesn't grow on trees, everybody. Right? This is the whole point of this
Thanks,
problem.
Matt. Appreciate it.
But you are increasing our budget $400,000. You're going above that amount. So you're going to take that, and that's what harms our bond rating. That when that surplus, that fund balance goes down for the town, that's part of that. The library doesn't have that requirement. Right? They don't have to worry about a bond rating. Anyway, yes, go ahead.
Well, the maintenance of effort, it's clear cut. I mean, if we don't fund, like we've been funding for the last 5 years, that we will not receive state money, okay? I think whatever the political landscape is, we need to keep that, going until everything's sorted out. To cut that, I mean, we're going to put in 4, but we're going to get another, 187 back into their coffers. So next year, they keep, next year their budget will be stronger, and whatever direction we're going to go in with the library, which is an unknown, is there'll be money there. They're not going to go out and start passing out vacations to Hawaii or something. I mean, this is money that's been sitting. They're not spending it frivolously. I mean, I don't see them, a rogue. They're not up at the Providence Place Mall, for the record. So I just feel that not funding them is a worse sin than, I don't see the savings here. I just don't see it, because it's going to cost us more to bring them back alive if we cut the funding today. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
So you make an interesting point, Patrick. You want to go into the taxpayers' fund balance to take the money out, but you don't want the library to go into their fund balance, transfer the money into our account, we give it back, and they get their 181.
Well, where's the proposal? Who didn't put an agenda item?
They had
where's the Blue Ribbon Commission to put that deal together?
They had that option, Patrick, through OLIS.
So the reason
The Board of Trustees has to do that.
They have to do that. We can't do it. They had that option. And people know they had that option.
There was no RFP.
Yes, they can.
You wouldn't even let them in the building, for God's sake.
Patrick, they have that option. They do that option. They get their 181. They'll have more funding than they had last year, and they'll be fine.
Okay, let's hear from
The reason why we're going into the reserve is because you cut the budget. It was supposed to be in the general budget. It's not, this is a last-ditch effort to get that 181. It's not ideal, we know that, because you took the $400,000 out of their budget for the pickleball courts. So that is why we're going into the reserve. That wasn't the plan. We know how you're going to vote. This is the last chance. Vote yes or vote no. That's it. So that's all we're doing. We're proposing it. If you don't want to vote for it, you can vote no.
No. Interesting enough, that pickle board keeps coming up, and it's not fair to Parks and Recs. That money was approved, if you go back, the last council. You need to go into the records and check. That was the last council that approved the money for that, not this council. And if you go into budget and you pay attention to those numbers and see what's going on year to year, you would know that. Now I'm going to tell you, the library board knows they can take the money, pass it on to our finance director. She's going to give it back. It's called a transfer of funds. Transfer in, transfer out. And OLIS will give you the 181. Everybody will be happy. The money is not coming out of the taxpayer's pocket again. It's not.
So without the funding,
funding, Patrick. They got it. They got it sitting in their coffers.
They got 400. So next year, we're going to give them 400, correct?
No.
We're not going to give them 400.
Patrick, next year's budget. This year, they're going to transfer their money in. We're going to give it back. They're going to gain 181. They're going to gain
Oh,
that
I get it.
181.
I get that one,
Okay.
but I mean, it's a little late for that. I mean, if we.
Why is it late?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you have to cobble.
You
something
have the
together and get
extension.
this- Well, can we put in an amendment now to do
No, the
that?
Board of Trustees can call a meeting and
They
do it.
can call a meeting and do
They
it.
have to send it back.
They can do it instantly.
I guess let the folks, let's get to it.
So Carleen, please.
Carleen Town, 240 Woodhill Road. I think Karen Meller's letter to Patty Arkwright with CCs to Lori Kelly and James Tierney clearly states that Matt, Jill, and Ricky jeopardized our library's ability to receive the state's tax-based grant and aid for free public libraries by cutting the library budget by $441,000. Did you even contact OLIS by the October 4th deadline to let it know that you intended to file a waiver? And why would the state even grant a waiver when it is known by all that the only department's budget cut in the entire town was that of the library? Slicing the library's budget by more than 50% and putting the library's future home up for sale smack of what? Fiscal responsibility? I think not. Sounds more like vindictiveness towards the library board and the so-called angry mob. I know that Matt constantly reminds us that this is not a question and answer period, but the taxpayers and residents need to know if we are going to have a library that is open 7 days a week, 6 days during the summer, 52 weeks of the year, with access to the state's resources and other libraries, with a 50% plus decrease in funding from the town and no state aid, that would be impossible. And that, my friends, is a sad commentary on the management of this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria, then Patrick. Wait, well,
I would like to address one comment that you made, that we didn't contact OLIS. I did email OLIS, and I spoke with them the exact day that I got, I believe it was Friday the 27th, and I CC'd Lori and Director Arkwright on that.
Oh, I didn't say you didn't. I just asked if you did, because they did give you a deadline. That's why I asked.
Met it?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, name and address, please.
Gloria Roman, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road. So a couple of points that you brought up. First of all, the $616,000 reserve that's left, and Matt, you were on the past town councils. We were directed by the past 10 town councils to save any surplus money so that that would help to pay for some of the transitions and renovations of the Belmont IGA building. That was the plan for multiple past town councils. So don't say that we just, that the library board just refuses to do that. That was the plan. It wasn't a plan to hoard money. And we have used that reserve. Where do you think the $25,000 came to repair our roof? Out of that reserve. The other issue is no department in the town was reduced their budget except the library. Now, you say that it's not a town library, they're not town employees. We are a municipal library, even though Ms. Waller many times stated we were a private library. We are a municipal library. Our employees, the library employees, their checks are paid by the town of Narragansett. Now, you tell me how they are not town employees. Well, why are you paying their salaries? Why are you cutting them a check and somebody else isn't cutting them a check? Mr. Lima, you brought up all the salaries. You failed to bring up that at the budget meeting, you approved, initially it was going to be $100,000 a year for a truck driver. And then you asked if they could do 50 now for part-time. but that salary is going to be $100,000 a year for a truck driver. So if you're going to cite salaries, you should be fair and cite other salaries. The bond rating. Don't you think the bond rating is affected by your plan to give a $1.3 million mortgage to somebody who wants to come in and open a food court? You cannot fool the residents of Narragansett to tell them that that will not affect our bond rating and that the bond rating is be affected by the library. The figures that the three of you state all are not accurate. You twist them and work them to fit what you want them to say. And you've done it all along.
Thank you, and
So-
that's not true. Thank you.
Excuse me, I don't
That's not
understand
true.
why you're
Thank
allowed
you.
to say what's true when it is true.
Thank you. Patrick.
Just, hold on. Just for the record, there's no DPW driver in this town that has a salary of $100,000. Nobody. Nobody. I think they'd like it, but there's nobody. The department head doesn't even make $100,000. So let's keep the facts.
Thank you.
Patrick Kavanaugh, Winterberry Road. I won't use all my 3 minutes. I really can't believe what I'm hearing. There used to be a TV show on, I don't know if it's still on, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? And that's all that's going through my head in the back of this room. We've talked to people that have come to this podium, and they keep going back 2 years over this whole library thing. We're supposed to stick to the line item that's being talked about. It says transfer $414,000 from the reserve. No politics, no ego, no left, right. Rick just sat there, and if Rick is correct, particularly to this line item, if we can just talk to the library commission tomorrow, and if there's still time for OLIS, transfer the damn money over, write a check back to the library, get the $181,000, and we don't have any more conversation on this issue tonight. Please, a little common sense. Let's all be smarter than a fifth grader. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to repeat 4 words: moderation, meditation, medication, and mediation.
Vicki Crowning-Shield, Birchwood Drive. So I'm having a hard time understanding this concept. So say you have a pension, for example, and the holder of that pension says, I'm going to cut it in half, unless you take out from your savings account and pay me that difference, and then I'll give it back to you and make up your full pension. Does that sound fair? Does that sound equitable? I just paid myself out of my savings. Maybe I fundraised for, maybe I did jewelry sales for. I mean, how is this concept even ethical? Where it's more like extortion than it sounds like a good deal. And a part of that reimbursement would have been come back from OLIS. OLIS would have given us money for free once we had done our whole plan. So you're not factoring that in. You're taking in the bits and pieces, and you're not factoring in the whole plan that was worked out. There would have been money from the library. There would have been money from OLIS. There would have been money from people fundraising. And all of that is gone.
Thank you. Mr. Shields.
Robert Shields, 37 Earls Court. I'm 100% behind this motion. I think that needs to be emphasized. Now, having said that, let me talk about the 3 members of the majority on the board, on the council. You seem to be forgetting that the state of Rhode Island sets different standards for libraries. It's not the same as any department in the town government. They rate more highly in terms of the employees they have to hire and the services they have to provide. I think Mr. Lima is entirely wrong in claiming that this would have been acceptable to take back $400,000 and then you would give the library the full payment, which they're due. I think you have to run that by OLIS. OLIS is an organization which enforces the state's library regulations. They must adhere to the law. Therefore, if you're going to expect a return to the town treasury from the library, you have to run that by OLIS. See if that meets their standards for exemption from the level funding formula. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd just like to comment on that remark.
And Mark, I got a question for you. Now,
Wait.
Patrick.
Ricky
Hold on.
and then Patrick.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
So the reason that I brought that up wasn't because I pulled it out of the sky or the mailman dropped it off to me yesterday. 2 state reps in the State House made that option available. I'm not going to mention their names, but if you want, I'll get them to come in here. 2 state reps worked on making that option available. So don't tell me it's not available. It was presented. The option was on the table. $414,000 in, $1,414,000 back. You get your 181. Everybody is happy having the state aid and be able to use whatever state functions are available. That's the deal. That deal was on the table. So don't try to tell me I'm miscalculating numbers. I'm throwing stuff out there that's not right. No, that option was available because they called me about it and they wanted to know what my opinion would be. There was also some other detail behind that I said I would be on board with as long as it went to the town manager, because we have a manager now. So do the right thing. Put the $414,000 in our finance director's hands. She'll transfer it back. You got your 181, and the deal's done. It's over. You got your state funding. We don't need to carry this on any further.
So Rick, are you offering then to amend this motion to what you just said?
Absolutely.
I would be in favor of that.
But the thing is, we can't direct the Board of Trustees to do that. They have to do it. The Board of Trustees has to do it.
They have to do it, but
They have to, so we
Well,
can...
we'll vote it down, and then they can go back and figure it out.
well, I got a question for Mark. Mark, okay, so the deal is, get this right, they're going to fund this, we're going to do the maintenance of effort, right? Correct? For the 2019 budget. And then we get the funding from the state. And then we turn around and take money back from the library. Isn't that like fraud? Isn't that like money laundering type thing? I mean, even for a criminal empire like Rhode Island, that's got to be on the edge there.
Well, it's because you have the sequence of events off. The first would be that they would return the money to us, which you skipped that step.
It's still, well, that's what I'm saying.
Again, this is what's...
It's money laundering.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
money laundering, please.
We're telling the state, of Rhode Island, listen, we're going to give you 18 change for this budget. All right?
Money
We get the state funding, and oh yeah, by the way, you guys owe us a check.
No,
I know a guy. I do know a guy.
probably, but this isn't laundering money. This was an option that was out there.
Well, Mark, what do you think? What's your legal opinion on that one?
Unfortunately, I wasn't involved in those conversations, but if OLIS is in on it and the state reps are in on it, if what I understand, listening to the explanations going back and forth, is that the first transaction would be that the library trust votes to refund, reimburse the town, whatever word you want to call it, for excess funding that they have in their accounts. It comes back. Once the money's received, the town votes to fund the library at whatever that number was, 841. They get the 841 funding. They get the match of 181. And the net effect is that the trust has 181,000 more next week than they do today. That's my understanding. I haven't spoken to OLIS, I haven't spoken with the state reps, but it's my understanding from this discussion that everyone's aware of the structure.
So OLIS was on board with that? Was it? And can somebody from the library enlighten us? Yeah, I guess. I don't, is that okay, Matt?
Yeah, no, let's keep going.
Let's see what they say. Because there's misinformation. I think you can't sit back and some kind of explanation.
So I'm going to have to come about it at a different angle here. First of all, it was said tonight that we're the only department hoarding money. Could someone ask the treasurer what other department has $4.3 million in an unassigned fund balance? Anyone? Anyone?
The school department has a fund balance.
Okay, because schools and libraries are allowed to have an unassigned fund balance.
But it's not
it goes
full 4.3.
Excuse me, I'm talking now. I think I have 3 minutes.
The 4.3
the point
million.
is that the school
no, you
has
stated,
4.34.
Lori, I'm going to restart your time, Lori. But the 4.3, you asked about a fund balance, but there's assigned and unassigned to that 4.3. So I'm going to restart your time, so say your name and address for the record, please, and then you can go ahead.
Lori Kelly, 25 Wildfield Farm Road. So the school also, schools and libraries are allowed to accrue unassigned fund balances. My understanding is from reading the town's financial records that it's 4.34 as of June 30th on the school's unassigned fund balance, which I do not think we should take away from them. But this same council raised that school board budget $355,000, and there was no chastising them for saving their money either, because both institutions are supported by the state to allow us to do roof repairs without coming to the council with our hat in hand. Rick Lima and Jill Lawler voted against us repairing our roof for $25,000 that we took out of our unassigned fund balance. So again, just look at this in totality. It is not about the library having an unassigned fund balance. It's about the library, period. Our increases were basically to people because we have lost 3 children's librarians. These are people with master's degrees, which the state requires us to have, but with no retirement plan, they leave. We then have to promote someone to fulfill that job. Perhaps you can understand they don't want to be paid minimum wage to head the children's, department. Similarly, reference department. And part of that money, to Jesse's point, is actually pension money, because sooner or later, someone's going to look at this as very unequal, that you have some people getting pensions and some being denied any retirement basis at all. Again, Mr. Lima says he spoke to 2 reps. Okay, so the library actually had contacted the state reps, all 4 of our state reps, to get them involved in this. And yes, the library board had meetings, wrote letters, which were given to Jim Sheehan, who I believe gave to you, Ricky, and you turned down our deals to get this done. So now you're saying, oh, we should just give you the money and you'll give it back to us. Again, this is something that we were trying to work out. We would be more than happy to have some sort of, adult conversation so that we could go forward. But no, this money is in our charter as being controlled by the library board. Just like you don't go to the school committee and ask them to turn over the $4.3 million, it's the same thing. We repair our roofs, we put in heating problems. If there's a heating, failure, we replace that. Any other questions? Because my minutes are up now. Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, you did have the discussion, and you could take the $414,000, transfer it, and get your funding. It's as simple as that. I know behind that you want to make library employees town employees, and I have no problem sitting down and discussing that. But right now on the table is $414,000. Transfer it, we give it back, you get your 181. Let's move on, and let's give this town manager an opportunity, talk to the library employees, and see if we can't come up with something where there'll be town employees, they'll be in the pension system, they'll follow the process that every other town employee follows, whether it's hiring, benefits, everything. But it's up to our town manager to be comfortable with it and put it together. That's what I would like, and I think that would be a great process if we allowed that to happen.
Is there anyone else? Stanley.
Sandwich House in Narragansett. Thanks, Rick, for giving me some numbers here, and I didn't know about those. Maintenance of effort. Maybe Otis is the guy with the problem, or people with the problem. It seems like that surplus, isn't that tax money? Isn't that dollars given by taxpayers to the library? So doesn't Otis see that we taxpayers have funded the library adequately? In fact, we overfunded it because they have a surplus. We've overfunded the library. The taxpayers overfunded, and now they're saying we don't have a maintenance of effort. We've overfunded the library. I say we went beyond the maintenance of effort. So they've got the problem here, and they need to be made aware that there's monies in there given by the taxpayers, get shown that we've maintained the effort and more than maintained the effort. And I can't believe we had $904,000, almost $1 million surplus. I can't believe that. 904, he said. I can't believe that. Now it got short. This is unbelievable. I brought up at different finance meetings. I've always argued about surpluses. Every time we have a surplus, we end up utilizing that doggone thing for whatever. We always find the need for it. So I was against surpluses from day one on all things in the town. However, now it really comes out here that the surpluses certainly prove to Otis that we have a maintenance of effort success here. And somebody needs to make them aware of it. I don't know who. But we got a problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
One quick thing to Jim. Jim, I know you have plans tomorrow to speak to Otis, to Karen at Otis. Would you pose this question that should the Library Board of Trustees vote to be able to give the $414 that's in that account back to the town, would they accept that, and would this be something we could go for? Because I'm hearing from Rick and myself, and I think everybody here, Matt's shaking his head yes and two, that we'd be willing to do that. We'd even have a special meeting, come in, but if you could have that conversation with Karen, that would be greatly appreciated. We could stop this from happening.
I have to get back to them, but I have to get back to them by noontime tomorrow anyway. I can just ask her about it.
Perfect, thank you.
What's the drop dead date on this? Friday? Isn't it Friday?
They wanted to know what the intent was, I believe, by the 4th of October. But
Yeah.
the 27th, I told them that we were going to, that was our intent to either ask for an extension or for the waiver.
So we got,
And then that was on the 27th. I gave them that. And then
Oh, okay.
I got notice today that they'd like some information by noontime tomorrow. But November 1st was the application, the waiver deadline.
Right, okay. Tansy.
Yeah, so they know of our intent.
Right.
To go for the waiver in general. They know about that.
We're talking about intent.
Karen Chapshello at 63 Wanda Street. I have a few issues, Matthew, with the way you explain things from your slippery soapbox and doing your politicizing by trying to filibuster even such things as the recall amendment, which has already been discussed and gotten the signatures. It's very telling that the school department has been losing students and now creates programs to attract students, but not families and not taxpayers from out of state. And there have been additional personnel added to the school department as far as one of the examples was a strategic plan designer. And I really resent all the many names and all the many innuendos you're calling the Library Board of Trustees. It's extremely unprofessional, and it's bullying. It's absolute bullying. And your stories and your spin on things are not accurate. And you're trying to confabulate scenarios that don't exist. Is unjust to all the taxpayers that live here year-round. I don't know who your audience is that you're catering to, but it's certainly not the citizens of this town who voted, and in many cases, they're sorry who they voted for because we don't feel we got straight answers along the way. Once you were elected, you have an affirmative obligation to serve the needs of the people in this town. And I think you three are making, it's almost like people shake their heads. They can't believe what is going on in this town. And you trying to call us names to wiggle out of your responsibility is irresponsible. It's slanderous to the people that are on the board. And it's just, you use the term surplus instead of fund balance. It's all linguistics you're playing games with.
Thank you, Karen, but could you be on the motion? Could you talk about this motion that we're on?
I am talking about the motion.
We haven't mentioned one
of
thing.
restoring the fund balance, Mr. Lima.
Yes.
All right. Jason Howell, 116 Westmoreland Street. I mean, I kind of agree with the people who don't want to spend money. I agree. Like, you know, I'm amazed that we're talking about $400,000 when this town council has voted for everything. I mean, we got new police cars. How much is a police car?
They're different prices. They're different prices.
I guess they're different prices, but I would say about 2 of those is $400,000. And when we spend money and we fund everything gets voted for. Yes, vote for that. Every time you guys vote for everything. But then all of a sudden, we don't vote for an institution that's here. It's just mind-boggling to me that we're arguing about $400,000. We're not arguing about $4 million. We're arguing about $400,000, that you won't be able to fund that. And then that you would refuse state funds and because you'd rather give it to another town. I've never even heard of a town saying, let's refuse state funds and they should go to another town. I was always thinking that a town would say, We want federal money. We want state funds so that we can increase our, I don't know, activities and entertainment and fun for kids and children. I mean, so I look at the police cars that we have and I'm like, do we really need those things? I mean, do we really need these trucks, these new trucks and stuff like that? Could we maybe fund some activities for the children here, for some of the youth that got up here and spoke about how they would like a library? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. And then for the town to vote for every new purchase, money doesn't grow on trees. You're correct. And if I was up there, there would be a lot of things that I would probably follow Mr. Murray on and not vote for. Because I think we do spend tons of money on things that are just like, okay, let's spend money on that. We're not spending money on things that I think that my children would benefit from. The children that are eventually going to be possibly up there, that are going to run this town. You're taking away that opportunity for them because of your selfishness about some vendetta. I don't agree with some of the people here that have the vendetta against you, and I also don't agree with your vendetta against them. Let's organize this for the community, for everybody. Penalizing saving money? I mean, why are we penalizing people for saving money? I was always taught that if you save money in your account, that was a good thing. So now we're saying, oh boy, you saved all that money, you hoarded it away. Well, damn straight. I mean, come on. That's what I was taught. Save money. You know, you can give loans out to out-of-state people, but you can't fund everything in this town. Everything you funded, except for one thing. That doesn't look good at all. It doesn't look good. You just have to wake up, man, because you're not going to get reelected. Someone like me or someone else is going to get reelected, and we're going to do everything to make this community a better place, and we're going to accept the money from the state and the feds and everybody else so we can increase our community and its activities. This library isn't another bar, okay? It's not another club or it's not another anything. It's something for people to do. So it's beyond
Thank you, Jay. Yes.
Nancy McKenna, 19 Hemlock. I am reading a statement that Ted DiStefano asked me to write because he's ill at the time. On October the 2nd, the Narragansett Times read the headline, "State Denies Aid to Library." This should have come as no surprise to Narragansett residents who repeatedly warned Matthew Mannix, the town council president, and his two council enablers, Jill Lawler and Rick Lima, that slashing the library fund was not only a mean-spirited thing to do to the library patrons, but also a very costly budgeted folly for the town. How much will the legal fees be costing our town? As of this, oh, I'm sorry, I misread. How much is this going to cost our town? Over $180,000 this fiscal year. This amount represents the state aid that the library would have received had Mannix at all not drastically decimated the library budget. Presently, the town is fighting two separate lawsuits related to the council's reneging on making the former Belmont building into our new building. These suits will be extremely costly for the town to defend. Added to that cost is a $180,000 budget hole caused by the town council. What a president. To look for a silver lining here are some statistics quoted in one of the lawsuits about our wonderful town library. The library has 7,376 cardholders, representing 46.3% of the town's year-round residents. This is the 10th highest number of library cardholders in the state of Rhode Island. In fiscal year 2018, the library circulated 146,692 physical items. Although Narragansett ranks 25th in the state for population. It has the 10th highest number of cardholders in the state of Rhode Island. So it can be easily understood why so many residents of Narragansett are upset with the actions of our rogue council members. And certainly keep in mind that 68% of the voters in the last election voted to acquire the former Belmont building and remake it into a new, safe, and beautiful library we can all be proud of. On a final note, I've heard at least one of our uninformed council members say that there exists in Narragansett a silent majority of people who don't want a new library. This flies in the face of indisputable fact that 68% of our voting residents voted for a new library, which will which will benefit the broadest spectrum of our population, from toddlers to the very elderly. Finally, I say to Mannix and his followers, how are you going to make up for the budget gap of over $180,000 that you created by not level funding our library budget and by trying to severely cripple its financial well-being? And how will you pay the cost of defending 2 lawsuits that the town is facing? Why will the Narragansett taxpayers have to pay for your wildly reckless behavior?
So Terry, that letter came from Ted DeStefano, who's written about 5 letters to the editor criticizing me and the other council members. But I just want, that came from Ted DeStefano. I just want that for the record. Well, you said it at the beginning, and I think it's important. You said that you were reading Ted DeStefano's letter. Yeah, I wanted to clarify for the record who the voice was. It was Ted DeStefano, everybody. You said it. No, thank you. Please, one at a time. There's not a screaming out, okay? I think I'm sharing. I don't know if Terry got it. I think it's an important fact. Yes, Representative.
Good evening. For the record, I was not the state rep that was referred to tonight, and being as how there are only 2 state reps that represent Narragansett, I'm not exactly sure who or what Mr. Lima was referring to. The fact that we have failed to meet the MOE, the maintenance of effort, is astounding to me. I was also a recipient of that letter. It was CC'd to the 4 who do represent the town of Narragansett. In my 10 years in office, other than in Central Falls, I have not heard of a single town not meeting the requirement. Other than Central Falls, who was unable to meet that requirement. I never imagined a town as enlightened and as enriched as Narragansett would be giving the state's money back merely because they were unwilling to meet that obligation. And as far as the library's excess funds, that balance should not be spent down. It was meticulously saved for the anticipated move. And they should not be willing to expend that money because they will need it, because we will have a new library after the next election.
The motion asks for us to spend $414,000 in taxpayer money to obtain $180,000. So you can all do the math there. And I think that's the mindset that's at the General Assembly that we see over year after year. Yes, ma'am.
So just a simple comment. Mary Nadeau, 10 2nd Street, Narragansett, Rhode Island. So if I give you $414,000 and I say, I'll give you an extra 43% on your money, the return on investment is crazy. So we're going to be making an extra 43% on that money, and yet we're unwilling to take the state money. doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Susan.
Susan Amoruso, West Bay Drive. I just want to say that we should fund the library. And I agree with the gentleman who came up and said he couldn't believe, and I just want to reiterate that I hope there's a lot of people that are watching this that are saying, why do we want to give all this money to another town? Because it's not free money. That money is collected by every resident in the state of Rhode Island. That's where the funding comes from. So we're actually giving this money to the state so that they can ensure that libraries stay funded and stay independent of political whims. So for us we're disenfranchised. I think only 5 cities or towns in the state of Rhode Island have not taken advantage of that fund. And we haven't taken advantage of it because we can't, because we're not meeting the state requirements. So it's not some money that appears magically. We contribute to that. So I don't want you to volunteer my little portion that's going to that fund to go to another community. I think it's about time that Narragansett got a return on an investment that we've willingly made in the state of Rhode Island to keep libraries free and independent. And that's the whole purpose. It should not be a political operation here. It's for advancement of everyone.
Yeah. And then Catherine.
Hello, my name's Michelle Hicks. I live at 6 Shore Drive, and I just wanted to make one comment. That is that every year I donate to local libraries, and that's my personal money. I already pay my taxes to Narragansett. I don't think that that money that people donate, and that's probably where some of this reserve comes from, should be given back to the town that we're already paying taxes to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. I just want to make it clear, Jesse, that the $2.8 million that we spent to purchase this building after an emergency town council meeting came from our cash reserves. I asked Ms. Kenyon that specifically. She said $2.8 million has to come from the cash reserves to buy the building. And then I read that that was 90% of our cash reserves. So what I want to know is, where would this $414,000 come from? How much in cash reserves do we have left? Do we have, I'm not sure about all the different funds there are, but where exactly would this come from?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Rude.
Sorry about that. My foot fell asleep there. Dave Rudy, 125 Caswell Street. We've heard all the numbers. We understand Mr. Lima's point about this reserve building up over time. We understand that the town council in the past disenfranchised employees at the library and took away their pension, and that the library board has done the right thing and stopped the race to the bottom of the town employees that some in this town council, I think, would like to see. The fact is that this is not a financial issue. This is an issue of two things. One is a vision for the future. The majority on this board has no vision for this town's future. They see an empty building, and they see it as a place to have some kind of business that hasn't existed for 10 years and has failed in every attempt to exist. A vision of a food court or a fresh European-style market without a business plan that the buyer, who we are going to fund from our reserves, is going to then magically follow some magic plan. We saw the waving of the hands. We haven't seen anything on paper yet. But what this is really, the second thing, is a lack of trust. And if I look at the attitude of Mr. Lima as an example of negotiating, I would not give 1 micron of ground to that kind of attention to a principle that I just don't understand. This mirrors so much the national debate we are having in our federal government. And I am beside myself to think that if I lived in a town with a beautiful beach, that I take my dog walking on the beach in the morning, that I share a dog park with South Kingstown. And thank you for that, South Kingstown. I'm glad we could help the Rotary Club. That this town can't do the right thing for the library and then sit down with the library board. This town council has taken a promise of a future library that the library board worked on 10 years to come up with as the best alternative and turned it completely upside down. There is no trust. I don't see anything up here that I would trust, but maybe you guys can then sit down after this fiasco plays out and talk to each other and not demand, demand, and demand.
All right. If there's no one else,
Got one guy in the back there.
oh, yes.
Good evening. My name is Robert Combs. I live on 49 Robinson Street.
Speak into the microphone, please.
49 Robinson Street. Robert Combs. Got that? Someone came up here and said that they didn't hold their hat out when they went to fix the roof on the library because they used their own money. Wasn't that taxpayer money? Wasn't it already taxpayer money? It wasn't their money, right? We gave it to them. Kinda. So, I don't know, I'm still against the building. I'm not against the library, but I'm against the building because I think you got a lot more there than you know because you probably got 20-foot ceilings in there. It's not set up for a library. And the cement floor, you don't have the plumbing where you want it. So you're going to be way over your head. The roof's wrong. You got shared utilities with the package store, so it becomes a condominium. That's not going to work. So the package store has to come into the library to shut off their power. The library runs the air conditioner. You might as well start over. It's not a good building. I was in construction 30 years. I see it. I know it. It's way, way out of, it's a supermarket or a warehouse or something. It's not set up for a library. It's got 20-foot ceilings in there. What are you going to do with that? You're going to build the walls up and put drop ceilings? Or you're going to build a whole new ceiling in there? It's not set up. That's it. That's all I get to say.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know.
Let's vote.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No, motion fails 2-3. Is there a motion to direct the town manager to prepare the request for the waiver from the MOE requirements?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 27 is a motion to rescind all purchase and sales agreement on the subject property until all lawsuits have been resolved.
Matt, can we move up number 29?
No.
You can make a motion to do that if you, yeah.
I'll make a motion to move up 29.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion fails. 2-3.
Okay,
All right,
let's-
we're
let's-
back to number 27, a motion to rescind all purchase and sales agreements on the subject property until all lawsuits have been resolved. Is there a motion?
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Okay, this is mine. I put this on. Oh, yeah, this guy here helped me. Plus, we'll get all the credit.
Before you go
Yes.
forward, Patrick, this
Yes.
is essentially, again, a motion to reconsider a prior vote. You understand that, right? So if it's a motion to reconsider, we voted on these issues,
Yep.
then somebody who was on the side, the prevailing side, has to
I
change
understand.
their vote.
Right, I
So
understand. So, but the question is, because we have a court order, shouldn't we be rescinding all current purchase and sales agreements? And by the way, where is the buyer of the Belmont space?
Well, we have a stipulation in the motion, but your motion to rescind all purchase and sales agreement it's essentially a motion to reconsider. I mean, we can't keep having motions to reconsider on things that have been discussed.
Well, maybe get a ruling by our town solicitor.
I mean, feel free to ask him, but
Got a ruling on that, or is that pretty
we
much the
voted
same?
on these issues at two prior meetings, and
It is definitely the equivalent of a motion to reconsider, but let me take 2 seconds and just address the matter, because I think we can put it to bed quite easily. The town entered into an agreement with the lawyers representing the two parties that sued the town, and in that agreement agreed not to transfer title until the substantive issues, either on the TRO full hearing or on the substance of the lawsuits, is decided by a court. So we can't transfer a title. But what we did reserve the right to do, the town did, was we reserved the right to further negotiate, further market, work on the condo documents, progress the ball so that when the time comes and the town is successful, we can close on the transaction. So we can't unilaterally terminate a purchase and sales agreement, even if we wanted to. We have a binding contract, and we can't just, even if we wanted to, just terminate it without opening ourselves up to
Another lawsuit?
Another lawsuit.
Mark, just a follow-up on that. What are the terms of in the PNS for when a buyer is unresponsive to communication?
Well, the PNS doesn't become binding until the parties actually execute it. So right now on the Belmont building, that PNS has not been executed, and therefore the terms of the PNS are not binding and are really not even relevant until the parties execute it.
So we just have the approved motion from last meeting or 2 meetings ago, and that's all we have.
Correct.
Right?
We have the authorization to execute it, and the PNS has not been executed.
Okay. And it's true, though, that the buyer, Carlos Muta, has not responded since that meeting.
Well, responded, he hasn't executed it. We've had a couple of conversations since that, but he has not executed it at this point.
Okay, thank you.
So at this time, because of the court order, you can't move forward with a contract then?
We can move forward with executing another PNS. We can move forward with executing this PNS. We can move forward with the condo docs. What we can't move forward with, Patrick, is conveying title.
Right.
So we can't close.
Right. So, but do you think it's prudent for the town to enter into agreement that we don't have an agreement at this time, but we have a court order, based on a closing, we can't transfer title. So do you think it's wise for the town to sign a contract at this time before this is resolved by the courts? I mean, that sounds like more litigation. I mean, then if the court says, yeah, you can't transfer a title, then this guy's going to turn around and sue us for,
Yeah, I really don't want to speak any further about it. I mean, it's ongoing litigation, and we haven't even formulated our complete strategy on it, so I don't.
Sure, I understand.
I don't want to discuss, an active litigation matter.
I just don't think it's wise. I mean, if he does resurface, I think he left the country myself, but if he does resurface, I don't think it's wise for us to enter into an agreement. I think we're just setting ourselves up for yet another lawsuit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, item number 28 is a motion to direct the town manager and town building inspector to report to the council at the next town council meeting progress made on the Sunset Farm remediation plan in place and the timetable to complete work. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Nobody's going to second.
Town council meet, updated remediation.
Interesting. No one's going to second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jesse.
Motion to direct. Motion to direct.
So, Jill, this is Jill's item.
Okay.
Yep. So actually, Jim responded back to me and said that he'd like to present this evening on the status.
Yes, I can give you an update on it. I worked with Tony, our building inspector, based on the remediation plan agreement that was authored back in April. He has been in compliance with moving. There were certain deadlines set. One deadline that was not kept was the moving of the structure, but the town's partially at fault for that too, because we didn't provide him with a location.
The town isn't aware of any of this that you're speaking of, so could you elaborate into what you're talking about the structure? I'm doing this so that we can have some transparency. There's been many things that they've done to take care of how they had kept the farm, which is great, but the town just needs to be made aware of the status and what has been done, what needs to be done.
So you want to start with the notice that was from like a year or so ago, and then
Yeah, there was a notice that the operator of Sunset Farms, the tenant, had violated the lease, but more importantly, the abutting land. There were violations on the abutting land. So there was dumping of materials. There was the illegal construction of a structure. There was a host of things that this tenant did on town property that was not subject to the lease. And so his counsel and our office, with the help of the town manager, agreed to a mitigation plan so that he would rectify the deficiencies. And one of those was removing the illegally constructed building. And my understanding is that he's willing to do that, but he wants to reconstruct the building on the property that he has under lease. And rather than guess at what would be acceptable to the town, this is my understanding, he was looking for guidance from the town as to where that could be located. And of course, there are setback rules that must be met. The whole permitting process he must go through. And that's kind of where we are. So it all stemmed from activities really that went far beyond the property he's leasing and on conservation land. And he's made progress to restore that property, but the timetables haven't completely run, and he still has more work to do.
We did provide him with the location, the suggested approved location by the building inspector to move the structure. That was provided to him on the 27th. And Tony, today, did he go to the engineering?
Tony, do you want to come to the microphone?
Yes, he hired an engineer to take the shed structure off the Rotelli property, which is that land is supposed to be clean of all debris, structures, etc. It's conservation land, so that shed is going to be moved on the property that he leases from the town. It's in an R80 zoning district, so it has to be 50 front, 60 rear, 40 sides. Jim and we made up a map. I submitted it to the town manager, and we have like an acceptable footprint that he could put that structure in. And we told him, because of the size of the structure, that he has to have an engineered footing plan, because the structure is like 38 by 28. It's a little smaller, but it's got an overhang, so it's got to be structurally sound naturally if he moves it. Right now, it's on, I think it's on telephone poles. But that's part of the plan originally with the remediation plan, which was set up between the town manager, Mark Davis, and the council. He had to remove cement blocks by April 30th, 2019, which he did. The lumber, he had to remove all the lumber from that site on May 31st, 2019, and the shed had to be moved by July 31st. However, it was my understanding from the previous town manager that the council had to approve a location for this shed. Jim and I got together and we figured out where he could put it. We made a map through the GIS to make sure it's well off the Rotelli conservation land. There were a lot of other debris on the Rotelli property. I don't need to get into, old cars and cement blocks, old cars, tires, inoperable vehicles. He's removed all of those. So he has been working with us on this. So the next event will be the shed, moving that shed off the Rotelli property, and then by December 31st, it's got to be totally clean. He's got a bunch of loom piles and firewood, and he, according to the remediation plan, he has to remove that, large stacks of firewood and loom by December 31st, and that's the deadline for that. If you have any questions, I can be happy to answer them.
No.
And we are going to monitor it from this point forward, at least with probably every 3 weeks. Take a look, go in the right direction.
Yeah, he's hired an engineer. Jim and I spoke to him today. He's hired Carrigan Engineering to give us a engineered footing plan, because we don't want any liability, because the town owns the property, so we want to have it engineered.
I got a question. For the record, though, when Farrell got into this lease, there was no really designation of like a property line for him not to pass. I mean, the town just said, well, you got this, this, and this, and, I mean...
Well, there's no real designation of the property line.
Right.
Excuse me, my allergies are killing me. There's no designation of the property line, but the Rotelli property has to be totally
cleared out,
vegetated, cleared out.
But it's only like years later, then all of a sudden, the town had a problem with the Roselli property, right?
Right.
So
The
now he's
Ewing
acting in
property
good
is in the
faith
front, yeah.
in response to the lease.
So I think we've got a pretty good idea of where that shed can go. And,
Right.
I think it's mostly the setback off the Rotelli property, and that'll clean it
10
up.
feet, yeah, whatever it is, side lot.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So, Jim, can you update us on the problem that was a letter to the editor about Pepe Le Pew moving into Sunset Farm? Can you update us on the hemp?
We had received several complaints about the odor of the hemp. It's industrial hemp. He's licensed by Department of Business Regulation for 2 years. I think it's up until 2021, July of 2021. He's licensed through DBR to grow industrial hemp there.
So in fairness, he did come into town hall and he did have the proper paperwork signed by the town in order to grow the hemp. I don't know that anyone knew the extent of the smell that a hemp crop would have. I don't believe that Mr. Farrell nor the town understood that, but being in the neighborhood next to the farm, I think that a couple people are here tonight from Briggs. It's really bad. It penetrates into you have to close your windows, it's in your house. The smell is really noxious. And we found a zoning ordinance that talks about remedying this problem should something exist. If there's anybody from the neighborhood that wants to get up, it's appropriate time now.
Seconded this motion because it was about the remediation plan. I do think this should be discussed at the correct time. However, this is outside the scope of this motion.
Actually, it's not. If you look at the summary, it says motion will update the council and as
the
a condition,
remediation.
One at a
operation
time.
of the farm.
One at a time.
Operation of.
The summary doesn't mean anything, right?
One at a time.
Operation of the farm.
The motion is on remediation. This is outside the scope and should be spoken about when
It's in the summary. It's perfectly appropriate.
This is, so the motion itself is to direct the town manager to report at the next council meeting. The manager said that he would provide us with that update now.
And he's already done that today.
And progress made on Sunset Farm remediation plan in place, timetable to complete work. Right, so that's the motion. In terms of the hemp issue that was brought up, the town council did not approve that. That was not approved by the town council, that was approved by town staff. So prior to Jim being here. All right, is there anyone else from the council?
Yeah, for the record, this is industrial hemp. This isn't marijuana. This is marijuana. This is hemp that has less than, I think it's 0.02% THC. If it goes over that, it has to be destroyed. There's serious regulations about going over that certain THC percentage. And I know Briggs Farm is to the south, so it probably only happens when there's a north wind. But if nobody's complaining about cow chips, because I'm sure that's pretty ripe during the summer, I think it's just living next to the farm. So, farm life, for the record.
And that would be in the case of North Kingstown or Exeter that is hearing the same thing tonight, but that's owned land. This is town-owned land. And it seems to me that we're allowing the right of a tenant who doesn't pay taxes, who doesn't even give us a portion of any of the businesses he conducts on his property. We're putting his rights in over an entire neighborhood of taxpayers.
All right, if there's no one, oh, Catherine, yes.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. I think it's ludicrous that we're talking about a remediation plan. This, Mr. Farrell is supposed to be the caretaker of an historic farm. He should not have ever had old cars, old refrigerators, junk, whatever the heck he was doing, piling up on a historic farm. And we're just going to, I guess, let him clean it up now and no consequences. Is that what we're doing here? Because this actually doesn't make any kind of sense. This man has a responsibility to this town to maintain that town, that property. And really, is he really? I mean, think about it. You're talking about, he constructed a building, for Pete's sakes, on somebody else's land. He's running a full-scale landscaping business out of that place with dump trucks and all other kinds of junk he's got around. And now he's growing industrial hemp, which to me, since the town owns that land, shouldn't the town have been the one to ask for the license from DBR? I'm not quite sure why he has the ability to do this. And I think that we need to really fine the guy. I mean, really. He made a mess of the place. He should be fined.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Good.
Christina DeComas, 130 Daytona Avenue. I do live in Briggs Farm. It doesn't matter what way the wind is blowing. The smell is offensive. On September 21st, I was driving up Daytona Avenue with my car windows open. I had to close my windows. The noxious fumes gave me an instant headache. What appalls me is that this is town property. Why, as Jill said, is somebody who leases the property, who isn't a taxpayer, why their rights are put above the taxpayers? This is an industrial operation. The State Department of Business Regulation has issued an industrial hemp program, an industrial hemp license. What is the zoning of that land?
It's up to the town solicitor.
What's the zoning?
Yeah.
I believe it's, Tony, can you, I don't want to speak out of turn. I believe it's residential.
It is R80 residential.
Yeah, that's
So
a
what are
special
the
use
permitted
permit.
uses in R80?
Okay,
So
go
did he
ahead.
get a special use permit? Does he need one? I mean,
As far as I know, I don't know anything about the growing of hemp.
Yeah.
That's above my pay scale.
Yep.
However, I mean, you can grow crops in an R80.
Right.
Livestock farm crops. And that was always a farm, so it's probably grandfathered in.
Right.
Thank
But
you.
when the
Go
state,
ahead.
the State Department of Business Regulation lists this as an industrial operation, aren't industrial commercial uses of property only permitted in certain zoned areas?
Well,
I mean, how can you say that?
right.
You know, this is a property that is owned by the town.
Right.
Why isn't the town controlling the property?
That's a good
You know, you
question.
had a gentleman up here at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Eldridge, who said the beach is a gem, the farm is a gem. I did not choose to live adjacent to the town farm that has a noxious odor
Right.
of hemp. I don't care about chickens, cows, horses, wood-burning furnaces. That's part of a farm.
Right.
But it's very offensive
The
when
hemp.
it's hemp. This is a town property. What is the town going to do about that?
We're going to have to.
What are the legal rights of the town as far as the leasee is concerned?
Thank you. I think we should at least investigate the industrial residential dynamic,
Right.
which was brought to our attention by Tony. So we should definitely look into that.
Thank you.
I agree to that.
Yes, Richard.
Yeah, I'd like to speak as a recovering asthmatic, which mercifully in recent years isn't activated except when someone is smoking marijuana about a mile from me. It is an instant asthma attack. And it's hard to, I think, to describe it, but that particular stench can really trigger an asthma attack. It gets into the crevices of an asthmatic's lung. So that there is a safety issue here. I certainly would speak against the raising of marijuana for that reason. I really don't have any interest in sniffing industrial hemp. But if I were there and it caused an asthma attack, there would be quite a bit of hell to pay for that. And that is serious. And we seem to have a society where more and more children and adults have asthma. They have emphysema, COPD, and on you go. So if this is a health issue, this is an overriding issue.
Jim, do we have any, well, Steve's still here. Do we have any complaints at all from the Kinney Bungalow renters about this? I saw several weddings out there, nothing? Okay. One email? And Jim's received emails.
I smell it everywhere, marijuana. I mean, you're in the supermarket, I smell it everywhere. It's like I keep thinking I got a skunk
Well,
tied to my
Patrick,
truck or something, you know?
That's what we have 24/7.
Yeah.
And especially after a rain or especially in the heat and
Right.
humidity, and it doesn't go away. And you know what? It's not funny.
How much is out there?
I have no idea. I have no idea. But they're concerned. I walk my neighborhood, I speak to my neighbors all the time. They're very concerned about their property value going down. Because as Mr.
Right.
Comas stated, you know, everybody knew that you lived next to a farm, and people love that. People love living next to a farm. But the smell of the hemp is so intense. I've heard of people having migraines. I mean, asthma, I hadn't thought about that as well, but it's just not fair to an entire neighborhood to say that a town staff person signed off on this. I'm glad we have started looking into the zoning ordinance, but it's quality of life for an entire tax-paying neighborhood.
Mary Nato, 10 Second Street, Narragansett. I just want to bring up that on other motions, when we've gone off the motion, we've always been told to go back to the motion. So we're kind of expanding this, and I agree the hemp should be discussed, probably as a separate motion some other time. And also, we usually don't ever have any questions answered, but this particular item, people have been having the people go up and answer the questions. So I think we need to be a little more consistent in how we handle people's questions from the audience. Thank you.
Many times people on both sides of me will say about a particular item that the person should be cut off. I think both times I've been president, I've been relatively lenient, and you can go back and look over. If people go a little off the topic, I kind of let them go because they might be making a larger point. So again, review all the tapes, and you want to play the consistency argument. I had somebody email me about it. I think it's a mischaracterization of how I've run the meetings. But if you know, that's fine. I would encourage people just to look at the history and the and kind of the free flow of information. And I get the argument, but you know, somebody can always say to me, "I'm building my argument for something else." So just try not to engage in, you know, attacks on people personally is probably my only advice. So,
That's the next item.
That is the next item. All right. Anyone else? Yes, Stanley and then Jay.
I just wanted to say one thing. Jason Howell, 116 Westmoreland Street. The only concern I have here, I think he's probably made a wrong choice growing hemp, but the concerns from Mrs. Lawyer were always about the manure smell, and then, you know, the burning of the wood in the stove, and now it's the hemp. So my only concern here is that I think maybe people have a problem with the actual farm itself and the other things prior to the hemp that were an issue for some people, which I don't think was an issue for the members of the community or the town. So unfortunately, this, I think, may be an issue, but I just wanted to know that, you know, before this, there were other issues. So I hope there's not like an underlying reason behind this. It's just another thing for something else. That's all.
Stanley.
Stan Wojciechowski, Narragansett. I think Dr. Vangamish really hit it on the nose. We've got a potential health issue. Somebody could die. We got an emergency here, and therefore you are the landowners. Typically, you're in charge. You're the owners. We're the owners. We must do something immediately. And thank you for listening. Thank you for having this here. This is an emergency from my perspective, and we must fix it immediately. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So in terms of that, so we won't be having a report at the next meeting. If that was, we kind of did it tonight. All right, so there's really nothing to act on in terms of a vote because we've had the conversation. We've had the report from both the solicitor and the town manager, which gets us to item 29, which is a motion to direct the town solicitor to draft for a first reading an ordinance regarding behavior guidelines at town meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, this item comes from Ms. Lawler.
Sure. It's unfortunate that we have to come to a point to put this on, but recently behavior in town meetings have become to a point that it is very, very heated, and this motion is being put on to have our town solicitor to take a look at the ordinances currently in effect with Exeter. As you probably all saw today, the ACLU did write a letter. In their letter, they stated that it was legal for the town of Narragansett to be able to develop a meeting protocol parameters. So thank you to the ACLU for acknowledging the fact that what this agenda item is certainly legal. But they also said they didn't like it. Okay? So what this is going to do is create a climate that will be a civil climate so that people can come up who maybe speak and offer a different opinion. It's been very difficult for people to do that. The silent majority that has been talked about often does not show up at these meetings because they do not want to be ridiculed. So with this, we're ensuring that all First Amendment rights are protected while keeping our town meeting civil.
Right, anyone else from the council?
Yes. So first of all, the ACLU letter did not say that we could do whatever we want to restrict speech at town council meetings. It said we are... It said the council has a right to set reasonable restrictions on how the open forum period of its meetings is conducted, such as limiting the amount of time people can speak, and certainly can prohibit disruptive behavior. So disruptive is the key word here. That's the key word for this entire motion. And it's interesting that the one motion that will violate constitutional rights is saved for the very end of the meeting at 11 o'clock, when half the people have left. As for other towns, so in the summary of this motion, it says other towns such as Exeter. It should say one town, Exeter. It should also say that that ordinance was passed in the middle of September, so it's about 2 weeks old. So there's no feedback, there's no evidence on how things have gone. This is a brand new ordinance in Exeter. Again, one town in Rhode Island. So there's no other towns, there's a town. So what we're seeing here is the kind of thing that you do when you know that you've lost support from the public. Instead of listening to what people have to say, you try to block out all the negative feedback. Instead of taking in and processing different perspectives, you double down by silencing dissent. This is a sort of motion that shouldn't really come as a surprise to people that have been watching these meetings and paying attention. We saw this strategy early on when the council majority voted to move open forum from the beginning of our meetings to the very end, thus making it more difficult for young and old alike to speak their minds. Councilor Mannix lied to the public that night when he said that this would be a temporary move to accommodate for the former town manager's transition. When Councilor Murray and I proposed that we move open forum back to the beginning of the meeting, a few weeks later, the same majority refused. This is the same council president who routinely breaks our official town council rules when he refuses to open first and second ordinance readings to public comment, even though our rules compel the president to open all agenda items to public comment. As many of you listen and watch these meetings know, these are the sort of tactics that are the rule here, not the exception, unfortunately. What I'd like to do is call the town sergeant up to the podium, if Dave is here. And I don't know if if Chief Corrigan's here. I guess he's not here anymore. All right, Dave, if you don't mind coming up, I have a few questions for you. I think you'll be able to give a little bit of perspective based on your unique position here at the town. So you're the town sergeant, so your position is to keep order, I suppose?
Yes, Jim Manny asked me to take this position 2 years ago, approximately. He says mostly a ceremonial position. It was filled before and it was vacant for a little while. So he said he'd like to get some younger people involved in town council matters.
Okay, so you've had this role for about 2 years, and you've been to pretty much all the meetings except pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recall how many times an attendee has been removed from a meeting since you've been here?
Maybe one time and not by me. As Jim explained to me, he goes, you have no authority to remove anyone from the meeting, because if that needs to happen, that would be done by a law enforcement official.
Okay, so that, as far as you know, that happened one time possibly?
Right.
Right. All right. Do you recall, just for being here at the meetings, any instances of threats made with weapons, such as sticks?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Any other weapons?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, no physical threats?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. I was going to ask this to the chief. He's not here. If you know, that's great. If someone else, Jim, you may actually know from your experience on the force previously. Coming into the building, I didn't see any sort of signage barring firearms at the town hall. So I don't know if you know this or anyone else, but if a person was to possess a concealed carry permit, would they be able to bring a gun into the town hall?
I would say yes.
They would.
And
Okay.
matter of fact, I teach at a high school. It was up until recently where they were allowed to do that in schools until the state revised some of their state laws.
Okay, so that's allowed, but we're discussing banning sticks. All right.
I guess what's the definition of a stick? Popsicle stick? I'm not sure.
All right, cool. All right, thank you, Dave.
All right, could I speak to this matter as a resident? Sure. As a resident and also, and I'm not quite sure where this is going, but as you know, most of you know, I'm a teacher at North Kingston High School. I teach social studies. I've been teaching for over 23 years. I teach US 1, and I teach democracy. Some of you may know it as political science or civics class. And North Kingstown High School was one of the first high schools in the state to mandate that students take civics because we felt it was so important. Currently, as I told you, I teach civics, and I teach US 1 right now. And it's interesting, we're talking about the American Revolution and causes of the American Revolution. And also in that democracy class, civics class that I teach, we cover what the Founding Fathers thought was so important. There's a reason why Amendment 1 is Amendment 1. And it's the right to petition, the right of freedom of speech, and they were willing to die for that cause. And I have a quote here, which I was looking up, and I thought it was appropriate for tonight, if I may. If you give me 1 second. It's from one of my favorite people in history, and matter of fact, it's posted in my classroom. It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. And I think we should remember some of the things that the Founding Fathers did and what they said. And while I don't agree with everything that's said in this meeting, or any meeting, whether it comes from up there or behind me, I do feel it's very important that people get the right to say and think what they believe. Otherwise, we're heading down a direction which none of us would like to head in. So as a personal taxpayer in this town, living here on and off since 1985, and as a history teacher, I would never be in favor of such an amendment or such a rule or regulation in this town. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dave. So a few more questions here. I have a few questions for Solicitor Davis. So, we received that letter from the ACLU. Brings up some issues with freedom of speech, freedom of expression in the First Amendment, and how this ordinance really puts all that at risk. My first question for you has to do with how this applies to the council itself, as opposed to just the residents out there. So if, for instance, the president of the council refers to audience members as an angry mob, which is a personal attack on a large group of people in the audience, would there be the ability to remove that president at that meeting?
It's not a specific person I'm talking about.
I don't.
It's a personal attack on a group.
I don't know that getting into these hypotheticals would be useful. The point is well taken, and I think it's a slippery slope. And who makes the decisions, and what are the definitions? It's a very hard thing to marshal. I would also like to point out that we do have general rules and procedures for people speaking, and I would suggest that this applies to everybody, although this particular set of rules and procedures, which I think is handed out or posted with the agenda each meeting, in part reads that the citizen shall come forward, state their name and address, and it's asked that each person conducts themselves in an orderly and respectful fashion. And I think that's what the intent here is that I think everyone should be treated, as Jim had said when he was sworn in, everyone should be treated with respect, whether it's the town council speaking to the people that are in attendance or the people up at the podium speaking to the town council. It's got to be mutual respect. I'm not quite sure how you draft around that. I mean, for the most part, these are adults speaking, and we should all know what being respectful is and not making it, personal attacks. You can state in my opinion, you can state your position without getting personal. But I don't know, Jesse, it's a slippery slope. I've read the ACLU, I read the Exeter ordinance, and I wouldn't want to be the person making those calls.
Yep, I don't think anyone should. So thank you for that, by the way. I'm assuming, based on your background and also preparation for this item, that you've looked at some case law and precedent. So I want to run through a couple of those with you and just get those out there. And what we're really talking about here is freedom of expression, and that you can really only be removed from public spaces when you're disrupting proceedings. So it's not because you say something that people don't like or you call someone a name. It's the disruption, it's the stopping of the proceedings that, based on precedent, that's what could get people removed. And I can go through some of the cases that show that. So Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District, so 1969, students were wearing armbands in school, and the school was trying to stop that from happening. The Supreme Court held that armbands represented pure speech that is entirely separate from the actions or conduct of those participating in it. The court also held that the students did not lose their First Amendment rights of freedom of speech when they stepped into school property, just like you don't lose that when you step into the town hall. They said, in our system, undifferentiated fear or apprehension of disturbance is not enough to overcome the right of freedom of expression. So even in a limited government forum like a city council meeting, the First Amendment tightly constrains the government's power. Speakers may be removed only if they are actually disruptive. And when you use words like boisterous or personal, it's too subjective and too vague to use in an ordinance. And then we have Cohen versus California, so 1971. This was a court case that was about a sign in a public place that had an expletive in the sign. And the ruling was that states must have a better reason than a concern for generally disturbing the peace when they ban displaying an expletive in public space. So they can't just be concerned that it's going to disturb. It has to actually happen and be disruptive and disturb. And then we have White versus the city of Norwalk. That's 1990. So we're moving closer in time. So this has to do with a member of the audience at city hall meetings being removed. So extremely relevant. So the point at which speech becomes unduly repetitious or largely irrelevant is not mathematically determinable. The role of a moderator involves a great deal of discrepancy. Undoubtedly, abuses can occur, as when a moderator rules speech out of order simply because he disagrees with it, or because it employs words he does not like. Speakers are subject to restriction only when their speech disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of council meetings. So again, we're seeing the trend here, that it's actually based on time and disruption and stopping the meeting. It's not just because someone says something you don't like. I'll be wrapping up. I do have one more court case. Kind versus Santa Monica Rent Control, 1995. We upheld a spectator's ejection from a public meeting only, and that's the key word, only because he was disrupting the proceedings by yelling and trying to speak when it was not time for discussion. So that would be like if someone stood up in the middle of our meeting and disrupted, which is not what this ordinance pretends to do. So with all that said, I have a statement that's really for you because you're the one who's going to be directed to do this if it passes. But I do hope that you, Mr. Davis, will honor the oath you took to support the Constitution of the United States and the Rhode Island Constitution, and stand up for the people of Narragansett by declining to draft this unconstitutional ordinance if the motion passes tonight. This council and this town looks to you for counsel and relies on your integrity and expertise. We hope that you'll do what's right and not just what you're directed to do, no matter the consequences. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the council?
Okay, I guess I'm up. Well, I think this ordinance or potential ordinance is redundant. We have laws on the books. Certainly, a slander somebody or verbal abuse is an assault. So there are current laws on the books, and everything's videotaped. So I mean, if something happened, it's a matter of record. So I think this is just another example of this council and leadership trying to stifle dissensive talk and restrict opinion, which, you know, it's something this council has created. They poisoned the community well. It created animosity. And then now you want to stifle speech. So I'm totally against this. You know, unless somebody, I haven't seen anybody get violent. I'll tell you, we don't come up with some parking down there at Pilgrim. You think the library birds are bad. These surfers are a pretty rum bunch. Hey, this is part of being on the council. You got to take your lumps, and that's just part of the process. These are constituents. If they're disappointed, then show leadership. Decorum should come from the leader. It begets decorum. Thank you.
So this motion does not stop anyone from speaking. What this motion is looking at is talking about behavior guidelines. It's not okay to incite. It's not okay to incite an audience. It's not okay to have tumultuous behavior. It's almost getting at some point in past meetings that we've had disorderly conduct happening. We cannot. You talk about disruption. That's what we've been having. These meetings have been disruptive. So this is an attempt to make sure that people can speak their minds, but do it in a way that you can have a civil debate. We've lost the ability to have a civil debate in this council. In our council chambers, we are the people that make the law. And I am simply asking that our town solicitor takes a look at our current motion that we have and pens to it a motion that will make sure that people can disagree civilly. But civil is the main thing here.
Is it reciprocal?
Of course.
See, that's the problem. One counselor doesn't get to define what's acceptable behavior.
Right. Who's the gatekeeper? One person's insult could be another person's, that guy's got a good thought. Or, boy, that
Patrick, I think you all know when people are being insultive and using names
you know
and
what?
things.
The thing is, you get elected and, people don't agree with me. I've had 300 people boo at me. You gotta take your lumps. You want to play lumberjack, you got to handle your end of the log. That's what being up here is about.
I have no problem with people disagreeing with me whatsoever. However, I do believe that we are all, and Jim's initial speech was perfect on this, we have to have respect both ways. Come up and say your piece, disagree, that's fine.
But you can't regulate human behavior.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't.
You can. The town of Exeter has an ordinance out that I think is a good ordinance as far as meeting decorum.
So you're actually trying to ban insults from the town council meetings?
Oh, Jesse, I'm not going to don't stop putting words in my mouth. I said the way if you read the motion, it specifically says civility, keeping decorum, while being able to have everyone's First Amendment rights be focused on. I'm asking that our attorney take a look at this. I'm not going to write the motion. I'm not going to write the ordinance.
But one person's opinion is another person's dissent, is another person's, lack of decorum. So how do you regulate human behavior? You can't. The government's tried it several times. It doesn't work. Each one of us are different.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever gone to the State House and attended a meeting in the State House?
I try not to go up there.
So if you did, Teresa, you're here tonight, I don't think you see the behavior at the State House you see
I don't
here.
know about that. Jeez, I don't know. I've seen.
Are people allowed to bring signs with sticks in?
I don't think you want to. I don't think you want to use our
Teresa,
State House as an example of decorum.
I will give examples. And I have to actually say that I am embarrassed that I tonight gave in to some of the rhetoric. And when I sat down, I reflected that I come here not to be political. And my final statement this evening was political. I talked about an election, and that's not why I came here. And I was embarrassed by that when I sat down. I'll be absolutely honest with you. And I have to say that what this council and what this town is lacking right now is leadership. And it's lacking a true example. And I've been attending these meetings since I moved to Rhode Island in 2000, and I've never seen it like this.
Nor
And
have
it
I.
takes restraint, poise, in order to prevent it from going to where it is now. And I hope that we can each reflect on that and take an honest account of how we behave as elected public leaders in these forums and try to bring that back. And as far as what I've experienced up at the State House, we do allow signs in hearing rooms and out in the hallways. We have very vocal protests within the chamber. We do not allow signs. And we would never have someone managing a meeting who allowed themselves or others to be treated in a manner that I've witnessed week after week here in the town hall. And I truly hope that we can find a way to step outside of ourselves as individuals and look at the future of our town and the example that we're setting for the next generation. Thank you.
All right, is there any other council comment? All right, Richard.
We have gone backward since 2014. To me, it's not a question of debate, rights. It's a question of a productive exchange of views in a decent meeting. And I think we all share blame for this particular setback. And I go back to these 4 M's: moderation, meditation, medication, and most of all, what we lack here is a mediator. I wish the judge, in his ruling last week, had forced the town to mediation, because I believe with a good mediator and with a limit that we're talking about the former IGA grocery store, the 15,500 square feet, but not cubic feet, that we could be successful. And it's a shame that no one other than myself gets excited about the function of mediation. We must admit, we've gone beyond any hope of a civil discussion here. And this is not good. And it would be a great mediator indeed that somehow could pull this together. But please don't give up hope on mediation. And I must say that the behavior for the last, this is the fifth year of this discussion, has not helped the issue. We are so much further away from success in the library, and this ain't good. And we've just got to try mediation, because in here somewhere there is enough good faith. I admit some people have lost it, but these are not the people that the mediator will listen to. And believe me, let's try mediation.
All right, so I kind of find it a little ironic that Jesse has a motion to move forward this item, and then it's voted against. I remember Mrs. Laura saying at a meeting that she didn't want things to go past 11 p.m., and we're close to it. So I'm not sure why we can do it for some, but we can't do it for others. Your vote to move items forward on the agenda, but you know what you want to move your items forward, and other items you don't want to move forward. So I'm not sure why that is. Like, it should either be at the beginning or the end, and that's it for everybody, not a decision to be made at the whim of whoever feels best, so we can lose audiences to speak and then also have them here to speak when you have your point here at the podium. I said also back in the day to Matt, I said, Matt, I know you, and I said at the beginning, could you be the bigger person? And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the leader to be the bigger person. You're right, some of these people here in this audience may be a little bit too vocal or upset or enraged, or they have that freedom of expression a little loud, but I would also hope that you as a leader wouldn't yell back at them that you're the angry mob, into a camera. I mean, that's not leadership. I would hope, like I said at a meeting before, that you would be the bigger person. That's what we're looking for. That's why you're sitting up there. So the other point that I wanted to make is that he's right, freedom of expression. Some people are passionate and they have the right to have a freedom of expression. I'm not sure of the rules and regulations here, but are holding signs up illegal? Is applauding or standing up illegal? Is talking under your breath in the audience illegal? Is that a violation? So where are we going here? Like, are we going to start listing these different things, and are we going to enforce them? Inciting the audience, calling them an angry mob, I think is as bad as other people in this audience acted. I think that I myself have gotten up and just spoke passionately without being angry, even though I am, and I would hope that you and the other council members would do the same.
Thank you. Yes.
No, you'll be next.
Vicki Crowningshield, Birchwood Drive. So if you really want to restore civility to town hall meetings, you really should start by leading by example. You can't label your constituents an angry mob or you people and expect civility. You cannot address the speaking public with reproach and scorn and expect decorum to be upheld. You want to limit the signs addressed to you at meetings, start by listening to the people who hold them. When the people feel heard, they'll stop bringing the signs. When the people feel respected and that the will of the people is being represented, they will accept your judgment and stop speaking against you. People do not respect solely because they ought to. You cannot ordain respect. Respect is reciprocal. You get what you give. And right now, you're giving the residents of this town a lot of reasons to be angry, to doubt your intentions, and therefore not trust your decisions. Because we don't feel heard. We don't feel like you respect the will of the people. We don't trust that your actions aren't born of a self-serving end. This is why we come here to speak at the podium week after week. This is why we feel the need to vent on social media and to hold up signs and to snicker at your attempts to force obedience. You get what you give. Jesse and Patrick aren't the ones, as I hear you often claim, who incite us. We are boisterous because we're frustrated. We are angry at the willful and wanton disregard of our interests and preferences as a community by this town council. Your actions incite us. Your refusal to embrace community members for their ideas, intelligence, and commitment to make the town a success spurs resentment and breeds contempt. If you are truly hoping for civil and courteous town council meetings, you have the power to create this without enacting a feckless ordinance that will only live on paper. You have the power to change the discourse in this town. Respect begets respect. Those who are treated fairly and respectfully will want to reciprocate and treat the council with the same. We cannot wait for some magical decree to bring civility back to town. Self-awareness and a willingness of the leaders of our community to take responsibility for their contribution to the successes and the challenges are one of the most important first steps to gaining and maintaining the respect of the public. We look to you to set the standards of decorum, not on paper, but in action. The ball is in your court. Thank you.
So Jesse, your wife just articulated for us. You just articulated for us, okay?
She did, Matt. I appreciate it. You think people don't know what you're doing?
Just articulated for us that if I just flip my position, which is essentially what this is all about.
No, it's
right?
not.
Well, no, it really is. It's about you're not listening because you're not flipping your position. That has been, and it preceded you. The tactic preceded you. I know you do a good job of bringing out and getting people riled up, but the bottom line is it preceded you, the pressure on me to not have the position that I had.
It is. It's all about you, Matt.
No, it's not all about me. I'm saying it preceded you. Okay? It preceded you. And I remember it very vividly last term, so thank you.
You got it.
Sheila Sweeney, 39 Sunset Shores Drive, Narragansett. My first town council meeting that I came to was when we were voting for the president, and actually when Jesse was not here for that meeting. And he was away, and you guys decided to vote without him being here. And I think that's what started how you guys started to handle this town council. You did not give him the opportunity to come back. You did it without him being here. And I'm just letting you know that that's what I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Carlene.
Carlene Town, 240 Wood Hill Road. I've read Exeter's ordinance relating to decorum at town assemblies and meetings and see that Jill has lifted the language almost verbatim, except that I see no mention in Exeter's documents about weapons. In her summary, and don't say, Matt, that we are not voting on the summary, but on the motion, because the summary shows her intent. She further states that any item that could be used as a weapon, such as sticks, should be banned. Are you saying that my folding yardstick can be used as a weapon? Everyone who sees me at these town council meetings knows that I believe in the philosophy that idle hands are the devil's workshop. While waiting to speak, I am either knitting or cutting out images for my cards. If the sticks that hold our signs are weapons, will you declare my knitting needles and scissors weapons of mass destruction and ban them from future meetings? Believe me when I say, we proponents of democracy fight with sound, logical arguments, not with sticks, knitting needles, or scissors. Thank you.
Yes.
Glory Robin, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road. Vicki came up here as an individual person, and therefore, Matt, you kind of talked Jesse down to Jesse about what his wife is saying. That's really not proper decorum. And I want everybody to know that I'm wearing a crown today because Mr. Mannix at almost every meeting calls us the angry mob. And a couple of meetings ago, he told me that I was the queen of the mob. He told me multiple times, you are the queen of the mob. Therefore, my crown tonight. So things work both ways. As everyone has said, you're the leader. Start the decorum. Stop calling us names. Stop telling people that you're tired of their nonsense when they come up to speak. Stop telling people that our information is incorrect and yours is correct. Many times, your figures are twisted to make them come out as yours. You always get the last word because you're the president. So give us respect first. Show us how to be respectful, and you will get respect back. And that was a lesson you should have learned when you were a little child. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shields.
Gail Shields, 37 Earls Court. I would like to read from the letter that the ACLU sent to the town, or probably released as a press release. Quote, in one of the most seminal free speech rulings, the United States Supreme Court noted that this country's, quote, profound national commitment to the principle that debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open, and that it may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on government and public officials, unquote. But as the court emphasized, quote again, it is a prized American privilege to speak one's mind, although not always with perfectly good taste, on all public institutions, and this opportunity is to be afforded for vigorous advocacy, no less than abstract discussion. So keep that in mind, that if you try to limit speech at this town council, the Supreme Court will probably find that you are ruling against the Constitution. Thank you.
Yes.
Pat Cole, 20 Bayberry Road in Narragansett. I've been coming to these council meetings since January. I've been staying late often because you changed the way when we could come and speak to you. I've sat here and watched your faces and see that you go blank whenever people come up. You're not really listening to us, and that is disrespectful. And then it's very very obvious what the vote is going to be. We all know that, but we still come. Why do we come? Because we're passionate. We're passionate about what we believe in, and we want you to understand that. I don't think there's a reason for this ordinance at all. I think that we have shown great restraint in the face of the disrespect that you have shown us, starting right from the very beginning of your tenure here. So I am foursquare against this ordinance. I do not think it's necessary. I think it's offensive to the people who live here in Narragansett, who are good people and who only want what we voted for in the 2016 election.
Susan Amoruso, West Bay Drive. I was asked earlier by somebody who was interviewing people on what I thought of this, and when I read it, I was like, really? I don't get it, because there's things already in place. If someone's really a threat, they get removed, and we talked about it like maybe once. And when I started reading the court cases, I'm thinking, I could come up here and I could swear, I could do all these things, and it's all under the law. So this is a lose-lose. This is another court case. So if you go ahead and pass this, and I am kind of looking at the three of you who vote together, that we're open to yet another court case, and that speaks volumes. You know, it's already been decided in the courts. Exeter may have done it. They're going to face a court battle there. So what do we want to do? We want to spend more taxpayer money on legislating that's something that really doesn't need. And yes, sometimes people do get carried away, but as our other two council people have said, it comes with the job. And what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to rise above it and remain level-headed. But we don't need passing a law that is already declared unconstitutional. It's a waste of time.
Stanley.
The last guy to go against free speech. However, I just applaud the idea of trying to fix the problem. I think I'm the biggest violator of getting excited out here. I just get carried away most of the time. And then sometime I'm hoping to get my point across and get the ideas out there. And in fact, I think by all this arguing probably is great. We're getting a lot of facts. That's what I'd like to see more of, is facts. And that's the problem. That is our problem. I'd like to see facts and data, and we're seeing too much anti-people issues. And we really need to focus on facts and figures. I wish somehow we could tweak this to get that point across. We got to discuss the issues and not be intolerant of all those we don't agree with. And I'm not so sure how to do that myself, but I think everyone needs to. And I knew, two people told me they're afraid to come here and speak. I've had, I said, come on and at least say something, a couple of words. They don't want to do that. So I understand very well that there is people who are afraid to challenge the majority in this building, And so there is reasons to consider it. It's just the idea of how you tweak it and the details. We got to look it over a little more. That's all. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Council President. Meg Rogers, 68 Earls Court. I would respectfully ask the sponsor to please withdraw her motion or her direction to the town solicitor. with the realization that she's placed him in an untenable position. And I'm sorry that she has placed the lawyer who works for the people of Narragansett in this unenviable position. And I also want to remind the sponsor of the motion that Article 1, Section 21 of the Rhode Island Constitution states, quote, "No law abridging the freedom of speech shall be enacted," end quote. And to the sponsor, please know that I do not need your assurance that my First Amendment right of free speech will be protected through your ordinance that you've directed the town solicitor to make, because James Madison, its author, did that for us. Thank you.
Anita.
Hi, Anita Langer, 241 Colonel John Gardner Road. I just want to say that I also agree that you've placed the attorney in an untenable position. And I also think that you should withdraw your motion. I was a speech pathologist before I was a realtor, so I can tell you there's lots of different ways to communicate. There's communicate not only with speech, but language, verbal, nonverbal, facial expressions, gestures, tone, volume. I could say the same thing quietly, or I can say it very loud. I could say it with tone, with inflection, with prosody. How could anyone regulate what I say when I say it in different ways? And I think to try to even put this in an ordinance is a ridiculous kind of thing to do. Besides the freedom of speech that we all do have in the Constitution. But it's also impossible to decide what would be in an ordinance in terms of communication, because there's many forms of communication. And you can say the same thing many times in different ways. I disagree with you. I disagree with you. I disagree with you with a gesture. So see how those things can be very different. So it would be impossible for Attorney Davis to try to put that into an ordinance. Thank you.
Terry, I know our meeting rules ended 11, so is there a motion to, what do we do? What's the increment that we increase by?
I'll move that.
Wait, let me just, what is the increment, Terry? Is there
By
one?
majority council vote, you can extend in 15-minute increments.
That's what I thought. All right, is there a motion to extend the meeting
I'll
15
move that
minutes?
motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion approved 4-0. All right, is there anyone else? Chris?
So my name is Chris Mannix, 9 Aristic Trail. This is a very interesting moment in the history of our town. There actually was already a moment that could have been capitalized earlier in the history of our town, and it was not. On April 5th, 2019, Ryan Blessing of the South County Independent reported when, at one of these meetings, my life was threatened on camera by a member of the library board. It was at that point in time that there were several individuals, some of them that are sitting with you, Matthew, tonight, and many that are sitting in the audience, where in April, before there was ever the spirit of an ordinance, the desire for an ordinance, all the drama that we have had for these past several months, to say, wait a minute, stop. This is where it ends. You can campaign for the library, you can campaign against the library, you can like Matthew Mannix, you can like Jesse Pugh, but at those meetings, you cannot be threatening the life of the brother of the town council president. And that did not happen. We heard a lot of people talk about venting on social media and what has happened on social media. As the conversation is about Matthew, Jill, and Rick, it quickly becomes a conversation about me. In one instance, there was a graphic and obscene conversation about our deceased father. Our father passed away over 15 years ago, and yet no one on the forum said, why are you talking about a man that passed over 15 years ago? So I actually want to follow up on Representative Teresa Tanzi's words. This is an opportunity for people up there and people back here to think about their words, their actions, and also when they choose to be silent. Because when you're silent, it can be interpreted that you are endorsing those threats. Not appropriate April 5th when it was reported in the press, not appropriate tonight. Maybe this is the moment. Step back, deep breath, check yourselves, and think about what really is okay, whether or not the First Amendment allows it, but what's really okay for a beautiful town like Narragansett.
Yeah, I'm going to make a comment
you.
on that, and I'm not going to sit here and allow someone to lie to the entire public. Chris Mannix was not threatened. His life was not threatened. I know the background on that. That was a lie. He's using it for a political gain in this instance. That was a lie, Chris, and you know it. It's a police matter. It was a lie. Chris, that is a lie. You lied.
Jesse likes to call people in the Mannix family liars. It's about denigrating.
Bombs.
That's what it is. That's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for your grandstanding, Jesse.
What'd you say?
I said thank you for your grandstanding, Jesse. Thank you.
No, I'm just telling the
All right.
truth.
Thank you.
I'm telling the truth.
Do you want to talk about the civility? You know when the civility turned? Do you want to share with everybody when it actually turned?
If someone tells a lie, I'm going to correct it on the
Do you
spot.
want to share with everybody when it turned?
No.
You know when it was. You know when it was.
First meeting?
You know when it was, Jesse. You know the exact week in the middle of January when it was.
Matt, go ahead. Say
go
whatever
ahead.
you want.
I've already said it publicly.
Come to town council meeting tonight to listen to you 5 babies cry. And that's what you sound like. This is ridiculous. This is not a town council meeting.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Rude. Yes.
Dave Rudy, 125 Caswell Street. The thing that I'm hearing about this is disrespect. And what I want to ask is, in Ms. Lawler's discussion of this, she noted that we want to have reasonable, measured discussion. There is no discussion. The 3 majority members have already discussed this. The mind's made up. The votes are cast before we even got here. Folks who come up here and state their opinion, there's no back and forth. That's called a discussion, not just an oration. There's no back and forth about, well, we really need this because. And not only that, but if someone says something that one of the town council members doesn't like, they can, after the person leaves, rebut that, and there is no recourse for the person who has made that statement, except up here, where Jesse's wife gets called out, and Matt's brother gets called out, and you guys can go back and forth. I don't appreciate any of that. And I don't appreciate Mr. Mannix talking about Ted DeStefano, who wrote the letter, who is critical of me as the person whose statement was being read. This is the kind of thing that upsets the people who come here week after week to try to get something that we voted for in 2016. And anything you say about debate and reasoned discussion means nothing because you don't show that back to us.
All right, is there anyone else? All right, anyone from the council? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All
No.
opposed?
No.
No.
Negative.
Ricky, what was your vote?
Abstain.
Motion fails 1-3. All right, our next item is public comment, open forum. Please conduct yourself in an orderly and respectful fashion, and be as respectful as you can be. I'll repeat that, be as respectful as you can be.
Susan Amoruso, I'm glad that I have this opportunity because I just want to let everyone know that we were the state winners for the Reader's Digest, nicest place in America, for the library staff. And finally, it is going to be announced on the Today Show on Friday at some point. So Today Show runs a 3-hour span. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who voted to endorse that we have a wonderful library staff, that they're like miracle workers, and they competed against other nice places in our great state. And they are the winners, even though it wasn't acknowledged by the town council. But they are the state winners, and it's a big deal. And they're going to have a 30-page spread in the Reader's Digest for the November issue. And it's my understanding from the email that I got, because I nominated them, that all of the nominees are going to have some kind of like a word or a promotion in their magazine. So watch the Today Show, see who the winner is. It's not us. I mean, we're not first place, but because there's so many wonderful things happening. And then look in the Reader's Digest in November so that you get to see what kind of publicity we did get, because it's a good thing. And that's what we need more of, happy news. So congratulations to the library staff, state winners.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Richard, and then you, okay? The woman, I don't think you've spoken tonight. Come forward.
My name is Arlene Meckler. I live on Wanda Street. And I just have some questions about the public hearing that's scheduled for October 21st at 7 o'clock on the new bike path for town. My question basically is, if you have a town council meeting that's going to start at 7:30, will there be ample time for the people who are going to be dramatically impacted by this bike path, 2 streets in town, Wanda Street and Othmar Street, to have our say?
And I don't want to interrupt you. It's a work session, so it's not a public hearing, and usually no decision comes out of a work session. I can say that if we don't feel we've come to a consensus for instruction for a motion to come before the council, then we're going to have to come back. We didn't anticipate when we set it up it would be as long, but that's what it is.
Maybe I misunderstood, but from reading the paperwork that was available on the town website, the 2 streets in town will lose parking on their street. They will lose some property. They will have constant traffic down their street. The streets are not wide enough as it is. And if you're going to have a bike path, you will certainly not be able to have anyone park on the street at all in order to have anyone drive down that street. And I think it's imperative that you send residents, owners, taxpayers who live on those streets the information about the public hearing so that they can be informed and they can tell you how they feel about this bike path. It's 2 streets in the entire town that are going to be infected by, you know what I mean, going to be affected by this. And it's been very hush-hush. It came up at one meeting, and you really had to read through what the plan was. So I appreciate it if you would give the residents of those streets an opportunity to express their opinions.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, I would like to take this time to congratulate Matt, Jill, and Rick for doing the most amazing job I've ever seen in my many years in Narragansett, and that was selling the liquor store to the liquor store and having the only possible user of that useless second floor, which is the liquor store, do this. And it's a courageous act, and it's an act all of us should thank you for, because you saved us from the horror of what the previous council had done.
Thank you. It's 11:15. Is there a motion to extend the meeting? All right. If there is,
I'll make
is
a
there a
motion.
motion to adjourn? There's a motion to extend the meeting. Is there a second?
People want to speak?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. Motion fails 2-3. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion approved 5-0.